So we've been trying to do this for a few days, and it's just everybody's been traveling. It's my bad. I take responsibility. But we're going to have an excellent conversation today about Kamala, the border czar. Funny enough, just on August 9th, Larry, I don't know if you saw, an article was written in the New York Post regarding this very subject. And then some people from I think the Republican Senate Committee on border issues wrote a whole write up on it. So we'll cover that later. We'll go through your talking points on this issue. Just want to get everybody in here. Um, and so the audio from today is going to be, used for both press and will probably can be aired. So I'm going to limit the amount of speakers just initially, and we're going to let Larry do his thing, and then as those come up. Now, Larry, if you invited anybody in particular, just let me know with a DM, so that way I can bring them up. Anybody you want to hear speak. Otherwise, we will start this. And if there's anybody you don't want up, let me tell you as well. Tell me as well.
Well, I don't have a list for either. So
okay. Good.
Somebody here starts to be an asshole, then I'll let you handle that.
I'm
Hey, Larry, can I throw in for just a second for those who understand, who are placed on the stage, or Larry yourself, if you want to post a post of yours on the Nest, all you need to do is go to that original post that you've created and hit the share button, and you'll see the title of this space, and that's all you have to do is share to that title, and that will go up onto the Nest. Also, like Stell said, sharing out this space will be really important today, because it's going to have I think we're going to go into some really high level statistics and good conversations. Larry is very well known to be very bookish and has a lot of research behind what he presents. And so it should be a really good discussion.
Just one other housekeeping event. If you have any articles on Kamala's failures as a border czar, or any data you'd like to please pepper the bottom bubble for us, and I'll look through there, and I'll pick out some that maybe look interesting, maybe we haven't seen before. I'll make sure Larry sees them, and we'll cover them as well, and we'll bring you up to the mic. We'll look for the best.
Good morning, Vietnam.
Good morning, Ariel. How are you? Okay.
Yes, can I give a little breaking, or is it? I'll do it later.
The space is just going to be on Kamala and border crisis. It's not anything else.
Only on that. So just remind me later, Stels, to talk about Turkey.
Oh yeah.
A lot going on over there.
Definitely. But we're going to hold off on that, if that's okay, Ariel.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
okay, perfect.
Of course.
Thank you.
I'll wait.
Okay, this is going to be strictly because we want to keep the recording nice and tight, so it can be used for media, and also if Larry wants to distribute clips of it. Thanks so much. Okay, Larry. As we get more people in, I just want to make sure that we have enough people in here so that you can start.
So everybody with the space, of course.
Of course. Thank you, Ariel. Okay. Larry, you let me know when you're ready, and we will get started.
I am ready whenever you want me to get started.
Okay. All right. So let's go.
Well, let me first thank Stealth and Bree for helping me put this together. They're more tech savvy when it comes to this sort of thing, and I'm very grateful to them putting this together. But for the last 4 years, let me start with just a little background of what I've been doing, and thus offer you so that you'll know where my insight is coming from. For the last 4 years, I have been tracking these migrant groups all over South, Central, and on their way to North America. I've been doing that. Gosh, I've probably made north of 10 trips to South America, Colombia chiefly. Colombia is really the keystone here, and I'll explain why that is shortly. Along the Venezuelan border, Colombia and Venezuela, Brazil, Peru, Chile, and Darien Gap, Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico, and I've just returned from Mexico from a second trip to Mexico in the last couple of months. And what led me to do this was about the time of the pandemic. There was so much discussion about the border and what the Biden administration was doing, but it seemed to me that no one was really asking what's going on south of the border. So if you're sitting on your front porch and there's a stampede across your lawn of cattle, I think the first question you ask yourself is what's going on over there? What's happening that's driving these cattle across my property? Is there a brush fire? Are there poachers? Is there some sort of apex predator that is hunting these animals? What's happening? And rather than just going to the border itself, I wanted to go, and not just even on the other side of the border, just to the other side of the Rio Grande, but rather into Central and South America and engaging with people both high and low. So that is to say, the people who are working for the United Nations and for various immigration agencies that are assisting them along their way, talking to defense forces, particularly Senafront, which is the Panamanian border police, and then of course talking to the migrants themselves. What is happening? Why are they fleeing their homes and why are they coming to the United States? Now, one of the obvious answers to that question, of course, is that Democrats have sent essentially a global message that America is the magic kingdom. It's a pinata. It's the place where you can come and all your dreams will come true. We'll give you money. We'll give you cell phones. We'll house you. Free this, free that, and so on. That message has been heard loud and clear, not just in South and Central America, but all over the world. So since the pandemic, I've probably been in 20 countries. And there's no country that I've been in that I'm not encountering people who are trying to come to the United States. So they're very aware of the message that Democrats have sent. But there's more to it than that, because many of these migrants that you're speaking to are people who want to stay home. And when we're talking South America, we're chiefly talking Venezuelans. So we won't have a big discussion here on, Chavez and Maduro and the shitholing of Venezuela, what should be the richest, the wealthiest country in South America due to its natural resources, chiefly oil. Um, but these are people who can't stay home because they have gone in relatively short order from. You might be talking. This is an actual example. I have many of these. I'm talking to a guy he's a shoemaker and a shoe repairman. That's his profession. That's what he does. And he and his wife and their children were able to live off of his one income, let's say 10 years ago. And then she had to go to work. And then he and his wife were skipping a meal a day so that they could feed the children. Then they were skipping 2 meals a day. And then the children had to skip meals. And so it was after that he decided we have to get out of the country. They've seen massive inflation. Essentially, these are people who are all escaping socialism, or in many cases, I shouldn't say all, they're escaping socialism. And you need to understand that the dynamics of what's happening in South America is being reflected all over the world. So Bree would certainly know that each year I go to the World Economic Forum. So I'm not just focused on immigration, rather, there are several threads that connect here, and I'm connecting them all. But I go to Davos, I walk into the buildings like I own them. I sit and talk with prime ministers, with presidents, with movers and shakers, because they think that I'm one of them, that I'm a weffer like one of them. And I just sit and listen to them talking about reducing the global population and massive migrations and all these kinds of things, which they're doing as though they're talking batting averages. But you see, those the policies being implemented there and encouraged there all over the world, but chiefly in the Western world, what we're seeing on our border is also what's happening in Britain. It's also what's happening in continental Europe. It's also what's happening in South America. And they're pushing, of course, all of this. And but you turn on CNN, and CNN's explanation for these mass migrations to South America is, can you guess, climate change. They say that this is all due to climate change, which of course is complete nonsense. It's not due to climate change. It has everything to do with socialism. And in recent years, if you think of a country like, let's say, Colombia, most Americans, when they think Colombia, if they think anything at all, they think of, romancing the stone, or they think of Pablo Escobar. And 30 years ago, Medellin, Pablo Escobar's city, was the most dangerous city in the world for per capita murders. Medellin today is a pretty nice city, lovely weather. Is the city center is generally safe. But see, what has happened in South America, much like the 2020 election in the United States, is that we have seen in just the last few years, Chile, the most stable democracy in South America, fell to Marxists. Brazil fell to Marxists. Colombia has fallen to Marxists. Peru has fallen to Marxists. And Honduras has fallen to Marxists. And this is saying nothing about Venezuela itself, and all in very um, uh, questionable election circumstances. So again, the policies that we're seeing coming out of the World Economic Forum, and with their puppets that are installed in various cabinets. I mean, we have there's a lot of fake stuff, particularly with AI, that's floating all around the web and on social media. But let me tell you, the real stuff itself is sinister enough, where we have Klaus Schwab bragging. This is not AI. This is not digitally altered, bragging that they have, quote, penetrated cabinets around the world. And these are individuals who are all globalists, and they're what I call, unfortunately, as a writer, it doesn't translate to writing particularly well, but it does when you say it. They're what I call fascio Marxists. And unfortunately, when you when you write that, people will say fasco, but so I have to say Marxo fascist. But they're really chiefly first fascists, but they're using Marxist tactics in order to bring societal, political, cultural disruption. And one of their main ways of doing it is via mass immigration. And of course, we know that one of the motives here, of course, is to turn red states into blue states. And they're very quickly, fast tracking these people to citizenship, even though that's contrary to everything our country has stood for. But these are the things that they're doing. And I want to share with you, and I want to get to questions so that we can sort of tease some of this out. But let me just share with you an interesting little anecdote. So I am in Colombia, and I see all over Colombia the logo for the IOM. Sometimes it's OIM. I don't know why they use both, but they do. The Office of International Migration, or the International Office of Migration. It is a UN NGO, and their logo shows up all over the place. So I go into one of their centers, their immigration centers in Colombia, and they're a little suspicious to talk to me, particularly when they discover that I'm a writer. But it's a woman behind who's running this particular office. I managed to get on with her reasonably well. I promise her, and I would keep this promise. I won't use your name. I won't, in any way out you, but tell me what's going on. And of course, she's telling me that she's been given instructions to fly migrants into the United States. And she says, I myself can't even get on these planes. She said, we are given specific instructions about what nationalities we are to select to put on the planes. And she says they're chiefly Cubans, Haitians, and Venezuelans. She says, not Colombians. She says, so Colombians are trying to go through the Darien Gap, and they're moving on foot. And she says, we're also told that we're not really to vet them particularly carefully to see what their criminal records, their criminal backgrounds might be. And I said, where are the planes going? She says, even I don't know where the planes are going. And she says, look, I've been trying to go to the United States for 10 years. She says, I have a sister who lives in Queens. I can't even get a visa to get into the country. And she says, but I'm loading up planes daily to send into the United States. And it's via American Airlines that was being done. Now I'm in Mexico City just a few days ago. And then I fly back into the US. And again, I see the IOM or OIM, their logo in Mexico City. I see the things they're doing there. And then I fly into George Bush International Airport in Houston. And as I'm getting off the plane, you know the drill. I'm looking at my phone. It's been on airplane mode, and I walk into one of the main hallways where I'm walking towards passport control. A huge line of people is coming out of another hallway, but I'm not paying really close attention to them, and I just fall into the line with them because I'm looking at the arrows, passport control. Suddenly, I realize I am with a bunch of people who are all carrying IOM swag. They're wearing IOM t-shirts. They're wearing IOM name tags. They're carrying IOM bags. These are all the illegals who are being flown into the United States and in a separate line. And very quickly, one of the security guys who is assigned to this group, because they're all Spanish speakers, he spots me and says, sir, you are in the wrong line. And I was like, yeah, very interesting. Where's this line? Where's it going? And they have signage up that says, don't take any photographs. And of course, I took several photographs and I put it on my social media. But they're moving them through airports and in places where they really don't want you to see them. And this is to say nothing. So, there's two sides of this. I find that sometimes what I have to say on this topic doesn't really make anybody happy, because you see, on the one hand, the Biden administration is running a massive, and I want to stress this, a massive human trafficking operation. They don't care about these people. They don't care what's happening to these people. And wait till I tell you what is happening to them in places like the Darien Gap. How many of these people go missing? How many of them are raped, are murdered, are trafficked? I mean, it's a human tragedy what is happening to a lot of these people. You also have the cartels that are profiting hugely off of this, the Mexican police, which are profiting off of this, the indigenous peoples in the Darien Gap who are profiting off of this, and then of course the Biden administration themselves. So,
Larry, can I break in real quick and ask you a few questions, because this is it's an important topic, and I know you're going to go into some of these details, but you've been doing this for a long time. You've been observing this for a long time. And even back in 2015, 2016, I have reports. If we can remember the mass migration coming from Honduras, from other places in South and Central America, up through during the Obama administration years, things that aren't really discussed anymore. But there was a major issue and a major migration. We saw this occur as well with the Arab Spring that happened, because that was happening kind of at the same time. What is different now from when you observed these things back in 2015, 2016? Is it the number of people? Is it the organizations? We knew back then there were reports that money card was being handed out to migrants coming up through the border, and all of this was stopped almost immediately upon Trump's election, where he really he put into place some pretty stringent remain in place in Mexico and other type of organization. But I want to hear from you what you observe as you've been on the ground firsthand, the difference between Obama administration years and what we're seeing now.
Great question, Bree. And just in the last few years, I think the biggest thing that I've, even just in the last couple of months, by the way. I was just there in March, and then I was there again last week. I think the biggest thing is that it has become massively well organized, and the numbers. So, for instance, when I'm talking to Centerfront, an outpost commander, and I should say something here very quickly about geography. If you're not familiar with the geography and you have the ability while we're talking to pull up a map of the Darien Gap. Darien sits like it's 60 kilometers of dense jungle, and it sits like a cork on top of South America. So when people talk about the Trans American Highway, that you can drive it from Anchorage, Alaska, all the way to the tip of South America, that actually isn't true because there are no roads through the Darien Gap, so you have to take a ferry around that, and it's hyper dense jungle, and it's the Hotel California of jungles. People enter in and very frequently don't come out. But you see, now what's happening is there are trochas, that is to say pathways, that are continually opening up through Darien to make it easier to get through. And the Colombians don't like this because Colombia has never wanted a road through there. See, the Nixon administration wanted to put a highway through there, and the Panama has always been opposed to it because uh, Panama is Panama's a much more civilized country than, say, Colombia, and they've seen that as a kind of a buffer between them and that country. It makes immigration much more difficult. But you see, now what's happening is, I would say 4 years ago when I started, going through the Darien Gap was 2 weeks, and you might not live going through the Darien Gap. They've now opened up a pathway that's 3 days. So you see, and now I'm seeing the Office of International Migration all over the place, and other NGOs that are assisting, and the numbers of people are huge. So Centerfront, again, the Panamanian Border Patrol on the northern side of the Darien Gap, the outpost commander, again, didn't want to use his name, but he takes me into his office, and they're showing me a wall in their lecture hall where they're just training and talking to their own um, uh, soldiers. They really are soldiers. They're more or less special forces, very different from our own border patrol. And in 2020, 20,000 people, by their number, by their count, came through the Darien Gap. They anticipate more than 1 million this year, 500,000 last year. So you see what's happening. The numbers have increased hugely, and the numbers of NGOs have increased. And my own theory, and I want to stress this is a theory, I believe the money that's paying for this is being laundered through Ukraine.
Wow,
Darien, Larry, I posted up on the Jumbotron, which is above you, a picture of the Darien Gap and the explanation that you just went through as far as all the NGOs and the track and also the funding that has gone into it. So anybody in this space can refer to that as Larry is speaking if they're not familiar with it.
Thank you. Appreciate you doing.
Larry, you just dropped a pretty big
Yeah, that's huge.
bunker buster in this room. As we're learning how they're using bunker busters now in Lebanon finally. So
That's crisis manipulation to its very essence, is to utilize a crisis for your own. And Larry, it's something. There was a similar type of bunker buster bomb that went off in 2015, 2016, when there were leaked emails that came from George Soros's organization, called the PICO. And Pico was involved with a lot of money down in Nicaragua, in Cardinal Maradiaga's camp. He was very much involved in South America, and Pico's. I'm just reading a report right now on this. It's fascinating because a lot of this information has disappeared from public access because it's been years now. But even then, during that time, Cardinal Maradiaga is very close to Pope Francis. And he was working with Soros in order to be able to give Soros and Hillary Clinton access to Pope Francis when Pope Francis came to visit the United States right before the general election in 2016. And so, what I find really interesting here is that there seems to be a precursor to what you're saying now is occurring, and it's interesting because Hillary Clinton was one of the ones to say, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." I mean, this has been the kind of mantra behind the scenes in sadly both parties, but specifically under her guidance and her work in politics. But Pico no longer exists, and I think it was something to it was focused on faith-based organizations. The focus point was to try, again, it was an NGO, try to get people organizing interfaith communities in South America. So it's fascinating that you're bringing this up now, because I think that the 4 years that Trump was in office and he was not permitting, or he really cracked down on the illegal immigration. That was when we started to see this big movement for open borders in other countries. And I think you're correct in putting like a thumb onto this to say it was it was also a time of organizational build up to what we're seeing now, because it's quite disaggregated, and it's also very well organized. And I'll see if I can find some more information about Pico, but I don't believe it exists anymore in South America. It's under another name.
Let me just say a couple of things here regarding Soros. Soros, of course, is the boogeyman, and for good reason. He's a guy who has funded a lot of this. But let me connect a few dots that people may or may not be aware of where Soros is concerned. Soros was a student of Karl Popper's at the London School of Economics. Karl Popper, people on the spaces would read and like a lot of what Karl Popper said. Not all of it by any means, but you would agree with an awful lot of what he had to say. And Karl Popper was an Austrian who was in Vienna when Hitler's goose-stepping Wehrmacht came marching in, and he wrote a 2-volume work called "The Open Society and Its Enemies." Now, is this ringing any bells? So, George Soros was a student of his, and guess what the name of George Soros's nonprofit is called? The Open Society.
And Pico was underneath the Open Society, by the way. So Open Society was like the head, and Pico was underneath that.
Well, Open Society is still very much in business, but part of I don't think we can blame a Popper for where George Soros has taken the philosophy. But George Soros was Popper was a postmodern, and he believed that there needed to be a kind of permanent uncertainty about who had the truth. Because anyone who claimed to have truth, to have absolute truth, was a danger. And Popper was himself. His ideas were shaped in a world where you had two ideologies, both claiming to be scientific. You had fascism on the one hand, which claimed to be scientific, and then you had, of course, scientific socialism in the Soviet Union and communism on the other side. And so he felt that liberal democracies, could only sustain themselves in a world where there was a kind of permanent uncertainty regarding truth. And he was very much of the view that we must kind of, and this is sort of a crude way of putting it, but kind of mixing people groups, that in so doing, we'll be able to achieve a more long-lasting, stable democracy. Well, now, of course, we're seeing what that looks like. It was a naive notion, but George Soros named his organization after that seminal work, the Open Society. And he, of course, has pushed that. And that is the philosophy that is behind a lot of what we're trying to see. And that doesn't mean there aren't many narratives and sub motivations, that are going on. For instance, I'm talking to a cartel guy. The cartels are only interested in making money, but these are the kind of things that are going on. And I also want to come back to what Kaya was had zeroed in on, and that is me saying that I believe, and again, I stress, this would take a someone with a skill set that I do not possess, and that is an accountant, a very high level kind of accountant who has an ability to track monies that are being laundered. But I am convinced that the globalist agenda, and that is because I'm seeing it not just in this, but I'm seeing it in a lot of other ways, is superbly funded all over the world. It is superbly funded. And that's not just the Open Society. It isn't just George Soros. These monies are coming from somewhere. And while some of it, this going to Ukraine, is obviously going to Zelensky's wife's, closet and back into the pockets of corrupt Western politicians, I am thoroughly convinced that this agenda is being funded, at least in part, by monies that are being laundered in Ukraine, meaning American tax dollars that go to Ukraine ostensibly to help the poor Ukrainian people. And by the way, as I told former Prime Minister Theresa May this January at Davos, she was giving a lecture on all they were doing for Ukrainian refugees. So you see that it's not just, again, in South America or on our border. She was giving a lecture along with the former president of Portugal and Princess Eugenie, Prince Andrew's daughter, on all that they were doing for Ukrainian refugees who were pouring into Poland. And I went up and I spoke to her afterwards, and I said, I may be the only person in this room who's been in both Ukraine, and I was just in Poland a month ago. And I've talked to these refugees. And she looked alarmed. I said, Miss May, have you been in Ukraine? Have you been in Poland? Have you talked to these people? Because they're not seeing any of that money. So here they are extolling. She's just a figurehead. She's not herself doing it. But there she is extolling the virtues of the globalist open society and all that they're doing for these Ukrainian refugees. And it just so happened I had just been in Warsaw engaging with these refugees. And guess who they're being supported by? Church ministries that are helping them. That money's not coming from there's no tax revenues that are going to that. George Soros is not doing anything for those people. The money that is going into Ukraine is not going to help those people. It's churches that are helping those refugees. And they will tell you flat out, we're not seeing any of that money. Our families back in Ukraine aren't seeing any of that money. So where's the money going? Well, I think it is going to advance the globalist agenda. You got to bear in mind that, and I know that most of you listening know this, but it's worth repeating. The idea that they care about Ukrainians or these migrants who are coming to the U.S. border, Democrats don't give a shit about any of these people. Not at all. They are making cynical use of all of them. Bear in mind that it was, and it's not just Democrats, bear in mind that Lindsey Graham said, we will fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. I mean, that is the way they think. And that too, that war,
One
it's
of the
all part
most
of the
bizarre statements I've ever heard, Larry, in my life.
unbelievable.
It was true though. Like if you really understand the context of that mentality is, oh, as long as we don't have boots on the ground and someone else is dying, it's good to see as many Russians taken out as possible.
Larry,
That's what I've heard.
I have Raphael here we have a South American group chat in the back channels. I don't want to put you in there, Larry, simply for the fact that they tweet so many things in there sometimes, and it'll just be a mess. But I know Raphael wants to jump in. He's in Texas, and
Love to hear him.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry. Sorry, go ahead. I mean, Raphael, sorry, Larry. Oh my gosh, Raphael. Everybody retweet the space, and yeah, thanks.
No worries. No. Hey, look, it's the end of the week. It's a Friday. All of us are operating on less brain cells than usual, so all good. No, thank you so much for having me on stage. And then Larry, number one, thank you for what you do. I can say, like, just with the utmost sincerity. You are describing to a T that is happening over the Darien Gap, and the way that you're describing it is just word for word exactly how it is. And it's just so important that people realize just how dangerous it is, and the ramifications on not just a nationwide scale but on a hemispheric scale. As a Venezuelan American. So, well, American first, part of the pun, but my family is originally from Venezuela. So, obviously, given the nature of the topic, given that it is a current event, I stay very much up to date with what goes on in Venezuela. And I was always of the mind, it's kind of prophetic, right? I mean, we see what's going on. I know this is kind of a different discussion, but even with Kamala Harris just rolling out, Venezuela's gone through.
Raphael, you're rubber banding just a little bit, Raphael, just a little bit. I don't know if you're moving your Wi-Fi or anything, because I do want to hear what
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So what I was saying was that in a lot of ways, with the Venezuelan crisis has had ramifications on a hemispheric scale, right? Because we've seen nearly 8 million people flee the country in the course of a decade, and for the most part, not a whole lot of them were coming to the United States. For the most part, the waves of migrants that were reaching the United States were legal residents, right? Folks who were over time becoming citizens, right? Just assimilating pretty properly into the country. But of late, that has not been the case. We're starting to see folks who are crossing the Darien Gap, a lot of them through sheer desperation, which is understandable, right? Because the regime has created, back in Venezuela, has created conditions that are just frankly unsustainable. All that being said, a lot of the folks that are coming aren't necessarily the ones that have the best intentions, right? We hear a lot about this criminal organization, the Tren de Aragua, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that has made its way into the United States, and they already had a presence in other parts of the region. They've established networks in places like Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, Chile, and now, unfortunately, because of the open border policy, they have made their way into the United States, and we've seen them be part of these kinds of these theft rings in places like New York, Chicago. Really, really bad folks who were. Two of them were complicit in the murder of a 14-year-old girl here in Houston. That they're just people who may share with me a country of origin, but certainly not the kind of mentality of the kind of person that we want coming into the United States. So all that being said, I would love to get your perspective on just what's been going on over the past couple of weeks in Venezuela, not necessarily from a political perspective, but from the perspective of immigration, because if the status quo stays as is, we are going to see, I think, an even greater surge from the country, the likes of which I think can only be compared to numbers from World War I coming out of Europe. And if that's the case, and we have folks coming into the United States, we have even more folks who maybe some of them mean well, but then you have other ones who certainly don't. And it has just, I think, really, really concerning ramifications for the country from a national security standpoint.
Okay, let me try to answer that, Raphael, and give people who are listening a better understanding of what's happening. Most of the people that you're encountering in South America and going through the Darien Gap are themselves Venezuelans, and that is because of what has been going on, not just in the last couple of weeks, but for the last 2 decades in Venezuela. And so people are seeking to escape from there, and many of them are. I don't want to say. I find myself dispelling at least trying to dispel the idea of a lot of Americans that these are all criminals who are coming to the United States. They are not all criminals. 2 things are true at the same time. One is we are dealing with a human tragedy, a human crisis, a massive human trafficking op, and also with the fact that we have an open border, we need a closed border, and we need a sensible immigration policy. Both of those things are true. That said, let me go back to the conversation with the Centerfront outpost commander in Panama. And he says to me, and I quote, "Your country is committing suicide." He said, "We don't want these people." So you have to bear in mind that the countries that, let's just take Venezuelans as an example, the countries that those Venezuelans pass through, they're illegals in every country, not just the United States. The Colombians don't want them. They want them out. And it's because they're taking jobs now. They're being given because you see the new president of Colombia is tight with Maduro. He's a literal Marxist terrorist who has, under very nefarious circumstances, been, declared the winner of an election. So he took office last year, and he is, this is a guy who opened the border. See, the border had been closed between Colombia and Venezuela. That said, I do want people to understand that most of the Venezuelans I'm talking to want to be in Venezuela. We need to be doing things to help them stay in their own country. But when you reach a place where you can't feed your family, as many of them are, what they're doing is they're risking going through what are referred to as the trochas, the illegal pathways between Venezuela and Colombia, and that area is controlled by an indigenous people called the Wayu. The Wayu are people who are never conquered by the Spanish, and they remain unconquered as such. They don't have a country to themselves, but both the Venezuelan government and the Colombian government more or less leave them alone, and they have a militia that patrols the border between Colombia and Venezuela, and not for the purposes of preventing people from coming through, but to charge every single individual who comes through. And then they load them into a car and they dump them out on the Colombian side. And those individuals are looking for jobs, again, often very difficult, though Colombia is now fast tracking those people to citizenship and giving them health care. As you can see, Colombia is a very poor country, and these are not popular decisions that are being made. So some of them are being placed on planes and flown to the United States. Others are braving going through the Darien Gap with a plan of reaching the United States. But going back to the center front commander, he said to me, to try to reassure me, he said, "We are getting the biometrics of the people with whom we have encounters." So he's pointing at a board showing me that 500,000 people had come through the Darien Gap this year. And he says, "But we're collecting we're collecting the biometrics on them, and we're uploading them to Interpol to see if they have a criminal record." And I said, "Well, what do you do if they have one?" And he says, "We send them back to their country." And he says, "Otherwise, we say the United States is that way." He says, "Because we don't want them in Panama, we want them out." And he said, "We're being instructed to send them on." And I said, "Well, aren't you assuming that Venezuela or China or whatever country we're talking about here, the people who are coming through, that they have uploaded their criminal databases to Interpol?" And he looked trapped. And he said, "That would be true." And I said, "There's no chance that Venezuela has uploaded their criminal databases, or the Chinese, because we're also talking about Chinese who are coming through, and that's a separate conversation, that they've uploaded that to Interpol. So the likelihood that your biometrics are going to get a hit, going to get a return on a criminal is pretty remote. Don't you agree?" And the answer
So,
is that,
Larry, can I just interrupt for a second?
yes,
You're
ma'am.
making some really good points. The CP1 app, which is through the Immigration Office or
Yep.
Department of Homeland Security, they're supposedly vetting these individuals, but from what you're saying, they're unable to, based on many of these countries don't have a biometrics on these individuals to begin with. How is the CP1 app facilitating the flow of these people from all over the world through the Darien Gap and then up to America?
Yeah, I don't think we need to understand that the government offices and NGOs and so forth that are facilitating this are not monolithic, and it's the CBP, Customs Border Protection One app, which people can download, and that's a way of fast tracking them through the process. So some of you would have been on my Twitter feed and would see that I just posted a video of a horde of people outside of the U.S. Embassy who are all trying to get in and fast tracked in this way, not a normal visa process as we would normally understand it. Now, do understand that a lot of the embassy personnel would be very sympathetic with everything we're saying on this spaces, meaning they're not necessarily all on board with the globalist agenda. But I would go back to Bree's question early on, where she said, what's changed? Well, one of the things that has changed since the Obama years is that they have purged many government agencies. I mean, for instance, we know the Department of Justice and the military, at least at the highest levels, has by and large been purged of the old breed, of the patriotic, America loving, non woke sort. And that's also happening at every other government agency. And so, but still, you have people at these government agencies who aren't necessarily all on board on this. So remember the woman that I was talking about, who is herself working for the United Nations Immigration Office, who told me that they were being told not to vet these people too carefully, but to get them in the country. So I think you have several things that are going on. I think you have some who are very conscientiously trying to keep criminals out of the country, but I don't think the Kamala Harrises of the world care 2 cents for what their criminal background is or isn't.
I want to just jump in here for 1 second. So Larry, we know that there's been an increase of integration and infiltration into Venezuela, Colombia, the TBA region, of both Iran and Hezbollah, and even some other terrorist entities. Now, everybody was looking at Bukele because of his background with Palestine and the investments of the prior Saudi Wahhabism there, which hasn't really popped up of an issue so far in El Salvador, etc. But in Venezuela, Colombia, and the tri-border regions, we do know that it is a hotbed for terrorist activity. But we also know that the Iranians will pick up and fly individuals from South America, right? Certain countries, train them on certain tactics, right? How to move people for voting, for things. But also, it benefits them. And we've heard this before. And I believe Russia's definitely done it in some other countries like Syria. They've been able to move migrants as if you're moving rockets or throwing rockets right into the U.S. They're able to create these surges in moving migrants from those countries up through the southern borders, and the amount of drug trafficking is increased. Also, you have China and the CCP in those areas as well, and aggressively pursuing ports and infrastructure. When you combine those entities, let's just say those two, there's a whole other thing that occurs, because what you've had now is integration of terror countries that can move people and create a human crisis, almost like you're moving a military. Even though they may not be armed, it taxes our resources, it increases crimes over here, it increases rhetoric, it causes destabilization of our country. It's actually a tactic to almost create like a civil war in our own country, not necessarily because of those people's actions or non-actions, but housing crisis in New York, concerns over, crimes. You'll hear rapes and murders of moms running in the park at 6 a.m. All those things destabilize our infrastructure. And that is also a form of terrorism, whether you want to consider it external or domestic terrorism. By flooding our borders, by taxing our systems, having us in Senate hearings, committee hearings, funding things down there, causing almost like a civil war in different states, moving people from state to state, in the middle of the night, which Kamala and Biden have done. All this stuff as well, I would say, is another aspect, not just the human trafficking we know, but an aspect of what I consider external terrorism that only people are not noticing it yet. And I refer to the Politico article that was written about what Obama did by covering up the concerns over South America and terrorism, and why, because of Iran deal, he overlooked what was going on in Venezuela, Colombia, the tri-border regions, and was not simply that terrorists are coming over the border, but the activities of terrorism inside those countries, bringing in drugs to our country to kill our citizens, all that thing as well. That is a massive failure from that administration. And I just wanted to throw that out there and see your thoughts on this.
A great point. Couple of things in response to that. First of all, my engagement in Central and South America has really not brought me into much contact with, say, Arabic speakers. So we know that many Afghans, for instance, are being brought into the country. Many Somalis, Ilhan Omar's, country, are being brought in, but they're being flown directly into the United States. They're not making their way, as a rule, through the Darien Gap. But you are seeing a lot of Chinese and Indians coming through the Darien Gap. Now, people will wonder, well, why, if you're from China or you're from India, why in the world would you fly south of the Darien Gap? Why would you do that? And why would you want to bring your wife and your children through that horror? Why not fly north of it? Well, the simple answer to that is, if you just take a minute and look up visa requirements north of the Darien Gap for people from those countries, and the visa requirements for people south of the Darien Gap. So north of the Darien Gap, Nicaragua for a time did have visa upon arrival. So loads of Haitians were able to skip the Darien Gap and fly straight into Nicaragua and then make their way northward. But others, Nicaragua has since shut that down. So that means your only option is to fly into South America. And in South America, you have several countries, say Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, that either are visa upon arrival or no visa at all. And if you don't know what that means, if you haven't done a lot of international travel, some countries, like for instance, I was just in Egypt. And Egypt, I get a visa right at the airport. I just, pay $5 for it or something, and they stamp my passport, and boom, I'm in. But when I've gone to, say, China or Russia, I have to apply for that about 6 weeks or a couple of months in advance and send away your passport, and then they investigate you or whatever, and then they send it back with the visa in it, or they deny you, such as the case for me in China. I was denied on my second visit. So that's the way that works. So they're going there. Now, when I flew into the Darien Gap, and I managed to find some bush pilots, this all will sound just crazy as hell to some of you, but I found some bush pilots who were willing to fly me in to the Darien Gap, because the roads from, say, Cartagena to Nicoclí, which is one of the jumping off points in Colombia to the Darien Gap, that's all cartel country, and there are militias that fight all up and down that road. So we're talking about a 10 to 12 hour car ride, and I would probably need an armored vehicle in order to do that, because you may not make it. So I decided I would found some bush pilots, and a twin prop plane flew into a jungle airfield, an abandoned airfield, which they managed to find, and then just popped into Nicoclí. And of course, for those, if you don't know me, I'm tall. I'm about 6'3". I've got a shock of white hair, and you cannot hide me. Okay, all your guidebooks tell you blend in. There's zero hope of that for me. So what you have to do is just be as bold as brass and act like you're meant to be there. And it has a way of getting people to cooperate or move aside. But this is cartel country, so the cartels are controlling all that was going on in Nicoclí, where people are being loaded up on ferries. Now the ferries are charging. That is to say, these ferries are basically zodiacs that will seat about 30 people, and they charge, say, Venezuelans, Colombians, your typical South American. They're charging them, say, $150 each to do that, which is huge money for these people. But they managed to scrape it together. But not the Chinese. See what they do with the Chinese. The Venezuelans and Colombians and so forth are sleeping in cardboard boxes all along the beach, waiting to either save up that amount of money or to get on one of these ferries. The Chinese are in hotels. And see, what the cartels do is they know how to deal with these people because they're very naive. So they go over and meet with them in their hotel rooms, and they just ask them a few questions. So, well, why are you going to the United States? Ah, very interesting. Yeah, San Francisco is very nice. Do you have any family there? Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, I do. I have a sister. Oh, what does she do? She works for a software company. Interesting. It's going to be $5,000 per head. Well, we don't have that. Well, get her to wire it. You see, that's the way it works. So the Chinese
Wow.
are paying big money to go through, but for the most part, they're not going through the Darien Gap because you have, for lack of a better
Well,
way
it's
of
very
putting
dangerous, right?
it's incredibly dangerous. And what you can do, Kai, is you can go steerage, or you can go first class. And if you go first class, the Zodiacs will take you further north and drop you in a place like, say, Obaldia, which I flew into in a single prop plane, which is just to the northern side, on the Panamanian side of the Darien. So you don't have to go through any of that. But if you're a Venezuelan who's come out of your country with almost nothing, and by the way, you're taken advantage of by everybody. So, for instance, I mentioned the Wayu people. The Wayu people are charging about $150 to pass through their territory. Now, these Venezuelans, by and large, don't have it, but they give what they've got, and then they try to make a little bit of money in Colombia. And then the next thing they know, they're going to Darien, and they're paying a cartel member there. If they manage to survive getting through the Darien Gap on the other side, they got to pay again, and then they got to pay again, and they got to pay again. And the cartels are making huge money on this. But I want to give you this. My haunting remaining a memory that will stay with me for the rest of my life. In Darien, there are dead bodies all over the place. And part of the reason is because these people, if you just think of those of you who are on this space, you may pride yourself in being in pretty good shape. Maybe you're a jogger, something like that. The Darien Gap is a terrifying place. It is full of caiman. It is full of every kind of insect, every kind of. One group of people I spoke to, a woman in their party was eaten by a jaguar. I mean,
Oh my God.
this is the kind of stuff that happens there. So these are not people who are generally in shape for this, and the guides are pushing them 10, 12 hours a day, and they can't carry enough water. I was just in the Darien Gap very briefly, and I probably lost, 5 pounds of water. Sweat, this report. So you've got to be constantly hydrating. So what happens is they end up drinking out of streams where they get giardia. And if you've ever had dysentery or anything comparable to it, you will know that the fluid is going out of you faster than you can put it in. Also,
Yeah.
because they are selling to these people Red Bulls. So in order to keep going, you will have somebody who'll take 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 Red Bulls in a day. And so they're having cardiac arrests. And the bodies are just pulled off into the jungle because the indigenous peoples don't want people to see that. They don't want that to be there. But
It's bad for business.
it's bad for business. But I remember two cute Colombian girls that I would say were, let's say, maybe 16, and they're wearing spandex and their hats, and their ponytails are, fashionably, sticking out of the back, and they look like they think they're getting on a Disney ride. They're about to get on one of the Zodiacs. And again, I would figure they were, they couldn't have been more than 18, 15, 16, 17 years old max. And I stop these girls. They've never been out of Colombia. And I'm trying to tell them, please, please, please do not get on this ferry and do not go to the Darien Gap, because you will not make it. And that's because what happens is the cartel gangs and indigenous peoples, they stop these groups who are unarmed, and they say, we'll take that little boy. We'll take those 2 girls. The rest of you get the hell out of here. And when you speak to these people on the other side of the Darien Gap, they will tell you that there were people in their group that were raped. They saw it. I listened to one woman tell me she'd been raped 3 times and she wanted to go back to Venezuela. She was on a cell phone trying to talk her mother. She wanted to go back, but she couldn't go back through the Darien Gap. And these are the things that are happening to these people. And I blame the Biden administration for all of it. And it's because it reminds me of the annual migrations of the wildebeest from the northern Serengeti to the southern Serengeti. And they have to go through these rivers. You've all seen the Wild Kingdom, images, at National Geographic, where crocodiles wait and they feast off of these animals. And you see, it's like the Biden administration sits on the southern side of those rivers and says, come on, come on, come on, it's safe. Come on, America. The magic kingdom waits for you. And the things that are happening to these people are beyond tragic. And these girls, I couldn't make a dent in their thinking that America for them was, these were girls who wanted to be the next Sofia Vergara's, and who I think is a Colombian. And
Yeah.
in their mind, that's what they're going to. And I'm trying to tell them, you haven't a clue what waits for you on the other. This is the river Styx, girls. This is the river Styx. You are going into hell.
It's almost like the ISIS brides being, called over and manipulated to come over, right?
Yes.
From the US and UK and all these countries. Larry, I want to read 3 quick things, and I want you to, I sent you some content, and then I'm sure some people will comment on it. We'll go to some of the hands. Okay, this is from Sin City. He posted this. This is actual congressional testimony. Indeed, it was former Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff who warned that while Hezbollah makes Al Qaeda look like a minor league team, it poses the greatest threat to American national security. Moreover, the alliance between one of the most dangerous terrorist organizations in the world, Hezbollah, the number one state sponsor of terrorism in Iran, sworn enemy of the United States, and Venezuela, all in the backyard of the United States. When you put that together, you have a fully functioning, easily accessible terrorist network with a ready capacity to act if so inclined. And they're linked to gov infos there. Hold off. There's 2 more data points, and then I want to. There's also a post I sent you about Hezbollah financiers operating in South America. So I sent you that as well. And also the article about the secret backstory of how Obama let Hezbollah fester in South America. It's all related. And one other thing I wanted to point out, give me 1 second. And I think I DM'd you the article. So I'm just going to read a quick blurb from it. Larry. There you are. Okay. Based on this again from Sin City, based on historical smuggling networks along the Colombian-Venezuela border, Hezbollah has also established a network of operating cells to engage in illicit trafficking. One of the epicenters of this illegal trade is the town of Maicao. I hope I'm not pronouncing it correctly.
Macau is on the Venezuelan border.
Yep. Where Ali Mohammed Saleh, a former Hezbollah fighter with links to the Oficina de Envigado, ran a persistent operation of trafficking in drugs, weapons, contraband, bulk cash smuggling, and money laundering, whose profits went on to fund Hezbollah. Ayman Sayed Juma, a Colombian Lebanese drug kingpin who is also from Maicao, directed a drug trafficking organization that linked the Oficina de Envigado in Colombia, and Los Zetas in Mexico to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And this is just like a small portion of the posts that I have from him and from others, and I'll share those to you. But I just want to enter those data points in, just to kind of cement that there may be other actors in play here, Larry.
Well, China is a major actor here, and let me just respond to that in general. I can't speak to those specific instances. I'm not shocked by that, but I'm skeptical of the idea that Hezbollah operates with a free hand anywhere in Central and South America. I don't believe that. I could be mistaken, but I'm not going to say that they're not there. I'm sure they are, or that they are not moving people through into the United States for the purposes of terrorism. I wholly believe that, but it would be only with the blessing of the cartels. The cartels, the Mexican, Colombian cartels, are hugely powerful, and I don't see them surrendering Macau or an inch of their territory to these kinds of organizations. I see them allowing them to operate
It's almost like
under.
a merging of the organizations.
There we
Larry.
go.
They're
I
they're
could
they're
I could see them
teaching them tactics.
I could see them allowing them to work for a price beneath them. But let me just respond at a more of a 35,000 foot level. Going back to the Center Front Frontier Commander, when I'm talking to him and asking him, how many of these people do you think are military that are coming through? And he would agree with my assessment that most of these people are desperate people who are fleeing socialism. I want to emphasize this. These people are fleeing the very things that Democrats are trying to import into the United States. He would agree that the vast majority of these people, that's who they are. However, there are cartel elements and military elements. He says there's no question that we're seeing terrorists pass through here on their way to the United States, and who I think are sleeper cells that at some point will be called upon to attack our infrastructure. I think they've already been testing that with the burning of food processing plants and the train derailments, things of this nature. I think those are little test runs. But I do believe that those things are coming. And you just simply cannot allow an enemy like this within your borders in vast numbers. And I think they're here. I think they're already here. And again, I emphasize this has become not just over the course of years, but just in the last few months, it has become massively well organized.
I agree with you.
So, Larry, it goes back to all the funding that we've given all these NGOs through our federal.
100%.
Yeah. You want to speak about that? Or no?
Can we go to a couple hands, Andrea, and then
yeah.
we'll go back to Larry and the NGOs, because I think it's a huge, huge deal, Larry, the NGOs and the apps and the investment in the apps and in the NGOs. That, I spoke with Bonnie Glick, former acting director of USAID, and the number one thing I said to her, and God willing, she'll be back in the next administration. She worked under Donald Trump. Brilliant, brilliant woman on all this aid stuff. I said to her is, we need a complete stoppage of NGOs that are running south of the border or from inside of our borders, trying to pump people into this country without vetting. And in addition to that, putting key personnel in State Department to avoid really investigating asylum seekers' backgrounds. There's so much going on. There's literally an infiltration inside of that under the Mayorkas administration, of which we know like several of them have been put on they're still getting paid, but they are, off work, so to speak, suspended. So I do want to discuss. I just want to go to a couple of hands, just because I feel bad.
Can I jump in for just a second?
Sure. Go ahead, Ariel.
Do you know where is all the money the Biden administration and Kamala Harris transferred? How did they transfer the money to UNRWA, to the Palis? Where is all the money? You know?
Well, this a little different space topic. A little different space topic, Ariel, for now. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
so it's all in
regarding
Erdogan pocket
through Turkey. Yeah. Sorry, Larry.
Yeah, let me just say a couple of things because I know people are coming in and out of the space. I am talking about this on and off, and I've done a couple of full podcasts on this. You can find it on my Twitter feeds. You can find me on Twitter. We post the full podcast there, but also on YouTube. Ideas Have Consequences is the name of my podcast, and we're showing that here it's all audio. There I'm showing a fair amount of video that's related to these. We're covering a lot of other issues too, but I just said I was speaking at 35,000 feet. Let me take you to 50,000 feet. As I say, this is just one of several threads that I am following, and I'm slowly connecting them. I've made reference to the World Economic Forum. I've made reference to George Soros here, that Bree kindly brought up George Soros and the Open Society Foundation. All these things relate, and you need to understand that the Democrat Party, and when I say Democrats, I'm just referring to the United States, and when I say the global left, I'm referring to the whole enchilada. When I'm talking about them, they are terrified of Trump taking office, and they are absolutely terrified of that. And regardless of what you do or you don't think of Donald Trump, the reality is they cannot afford for him to take office. I feel like what we're seeing right now is something tantamount to the Allies moving in on Berlin, in May of 1945. And what we're seeing are people burning their uniforms and getting into civilian clothing and shredding documents and burning documents and this kind of stuff. They are absolutely terrified of that. And that is because this agenda is so close to being exposed in a big way. And I don't just mean the immigration piece. The immigration piece is huge. Some of what I'm experiencing, I come away and I'm not even sure I have the words to describe to you the feeling that I have. When I came back from Darien, when I came back from South America a few months ago, I had to get off of Twitter and such for a couple of weeks just because I felt such a heaviness of heart. So much of what I'd seen was so depressing. But I'm also seeing it in places like Nigeria. I wrote a series for Fox News titled "The Forgotten Christians of Nigeria," a terrifying country, arguably the most dangerous country in the world, where the Fulani herdsmen militia and the Boko Haram are slaughtering Christians there. When the Christians seek to arm themselves, guess who steps in and disarms them? Not just their own country, but the United Nations, calling it a human rights violation. These are the same policies that are being promoted everywhere, and I'm seeing it on every continent. So that's the 50,000-foot view. They cannot afford. Their whole agenda hangs in the balance. But I dare say a lot of these people risk jail time because what is happening here is mind-blowingly corrupt. So just at a little level. And when I'm in Mexico City a couple of weeks ago, I'm in conversation through intermediaries with a member of the cartel, low-level member of the cartel. And guess what he does? He drives essentially a bus full of migrants. So what is happening to these migrants? People are coming through Darien. They are loaded on buses because, again, they're illegals in every country they're in. Nobody wants them. These countries have better sense. They're all pointing towards the United States to say, get the hell out of here. The United States is north. Go that way. There's a bus. We'll put you on it. Get out of here. So that's what's happening. So Mexico City becomes kind of the last jumping off point. And in Mexico City, they wait for La Bestia. La Bestia is the train you've all seen. It's the big freight train with thousands of these migrants all over the top of it. It runs from the Guatemalan border in the south all the way to the U.S. border in the north. It's carrying mostly automobiles that are manufactured there. So they wait at a place called the dairy, Lecheria. They wait there and board this train. But when you talk to those people, and some of them are dangerous, most of them are not, what you discover is this. They've been to the border 3 times, 4 times, 6 times, 7 times, 9 times. And you're saying, what do you mean you've been to the border 7 times? I was arrested. You mean U.S. Border Patrol? No, arrested by Mexican Border Patrol. What? Yep, arrested by Mexican Border Patrol, put on a bus and shipped all the way down to the Guatemalan border, but not into Guatemala. Nope, just down to the border. And then we're forced out. And then what happens? We pay the cartels, and the cartels load us on a bus and they take us back to Mexico City, where we'll wait for La Bestia again. See, it's become like a game. They're on a treadmill, and everybody along the way is profiting off of this. But you're saying, why would the Mexican border police be arresting them? Well, first of all, there's profit in it from the cartels. Second, because they're getting pressure from the Biden administration for optics. So they want to say Kamala Harris is going to claim, see, we've reduced the numbers at the border. But you see, it's a lie, because they're flying them in by the hundreds of thousands, just as I was relating at George Bush Airport in Houston. So it's just a shell game. They're moving them from one place to another. This is what's happening. And mixed in with these people are terrorists. There's no question, and military sorts. I make a slight difference between the two, and loads of Chinese. Some of them are people who are facing genuine persecution in their own country, and thus we would have genuine sympathy with them. But many of them are people who have been trained. And by the way, don't assume that because you see young males that by themselves that always means they're military. The way this generally works is the way it worked in the founding of this country. A man would come over, establish a homestead, a foothold, and then he'd send for his family. And that's what's happening with a lot of these people. But the military sorts, some of you will know what I'm talking about. I was raised in the military, and they have a different bearing. You can spot them. At least I think you can.
I agree. Okay, because I called out Sin City on an article. Sin, would you jump in, and then we'll go to John and Sunlight and Philip. Go ahead, Sin. And welcome, Shelley, and everybody retweet the space. Thank you, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's great space, good firsthand accounting information. But I didn't want to disrupt the in any stretch of the imagination. But Larry did bring up something earlier that it's one of the things that I invite people to look at. Right, what Larry said was like we almost need a team. What he was saying was like forensic accountants who specialize in this stuff to follow the money. Right. So when you actually read the people who Americans should be reading to understand this more, which are the really reputable, highly trained intelligence and police organizations in Central and South America, right? They quite publicly post about this hybrid model, right? And that has telltale signatures, right? We invested billions of dollars, particularly in Colombia, in trading and modernizing a counter narcotics sort of law enforcement apparatus. It shifted, right? It is quite clearly a hybrid mechanism, and you can see it in their frustration. They don't understand how to deal with it in two very significant ways. One that you point out is financing. The financing does not look like a traditional cartel with shell games and shell cutouts. It's shifted to much more of a what we call territorial control model, right? Which also lends itself well to what you were just speaking about. The reason the Mexican police shift them back, right, is so that the individual controllers and profiteers of individual territories continue to be paid double, triple, quadruple, right? Like, why make money once when you can make it 4 or 5 times? It's like part of the business model. And the second area we see this is the sheer advancement in counterintelligence that they're putting out, right? And the decentralizations. These were not hallmarks of the cartel until this hybrid sort of emerged. And reputable law enforcement intelligence organizations in South and Central America are like, we don't know how to deal with this. We've never seen this animal before. And I would argue that I think that it is so new that even if the U.S. aimed its full law enforcement apparatus at it, I think they would be challenged as well. I think that they built something completely new and nuanced, a cellular-like terrorist cell based on territorial control model, and then a decentralized finance schema, which is going to take an army of forensic accountants to understand. It's very... yeah, that's all I'm going to say about it, because I don't want to derail, because this is great what Larry is saying, and like I'm obviously more interested in the terrorist nexus for obvious reasons, but the law enforcement reports that you can read from credible experts south of our border should be studied, because they're the ones who actually have dealt with the cartel for a very long period of time and are screaming right at the top of their lungs like, yo, something is different about this time. Like, something has changed. Like, we don't know quite how to deal with this. And they're saying it as loudly as you can, right, in these areas. Yeah, that's all I want to add, but this is great. Thanks for being here, Larry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's go to John.
A couple people here have really hit the nail on the head. You mentioned the DeFi part of it and the CBP1 app that even Mayorkas had to admit was an issue before he got impeached. I've kept track of this stuff for quite a while and found one of the epicenters of the problem, and I've submitted it in for indictments to the proper federal courts. So that should be, fun. I won't say who or what or where. if it's in the record, then it's in the record. If it's not, it's not. But yeah, some of the stuff that was said is really accurate. So it's real. Whenever you hit the nail on the head, there's attempts to use overturned Chevron doctrine to Rule 46 people that are forced to go pro se. And you're forced to go pro se by being falsely labeled a terrorist. And it's typically people who are, religious, pro-life. It has a very specific, malign, and conspiratorial underlying it. So, yeah, it's happening. Those things were very valid. I also, I am also concerned of the question that was asked, like, well, where did the money come from? But, once again, unless it's on the record, then
I'm putting
I can just tell you what's legit.
I'm putting that out there for some intrepid reporter or someone in the spaces who perhaps has the wherewithal to get out there and go after this. I will tell you that I do well. I have from day to day, my wife has to tell me what money I have in the bank account. I dare say I'm not in any kind of position to figure out what's going on with other people. But let's hear from Sunlight.
Yep, go ahead, Sunlight.
Hey, Larry. The second time I get to interact with you, man, and I just appreciate everything that you're doing to help expose this and shed some sunlight on this problem. But a couple things. So I just went and looked at the CBP Nationwide Encounters database that's online, and there are 10.5 million encounters, nationwide encounters, since the Biden administration took the office. You can back out a couple months, right? October, November, December, from the fiscal year of 2021 to account for the Trump thing, but it's roughly about 10.5 million. There's approximately, they estimate, friends that I have in the Border Patrol say that they estimate gotaways as about 30% of the known encounters. And so, there could be another 3 million on top of that. You throw in, the CBP One app, which are trying to keep off the books, add in visa overstays, from student visas, from visitor visas, from H-1B visas, and there hasn't. I've reached out to Bill Maloogian, and he's unable to come up with a number. And I've also posed the question, to the immigration group that Todd Bensman is a part of. And I haven't heard back on that. But do you have two things? Do you have a sense of what the total number of illegals and overstays and all that is in the aggregate since Biden took office, Biden and Harris? That's one question. Then the second one is I put a clip from Derek Harvey. I don't know if you're familiar with Colonel Derek Harvey. Talking about Chinese PLA, People's Liberation Army special operators, known special operators being released into the interior. And this is something that is taking place with the blessing of the United States intel community. And he has a clip in there. It was from an interview that he conducted with Lee Smith. And so that's up in the nest. But first thing is, do you have a sense of the aggregate number? I mean, I think we're looking at probably 15 million at this point. Is it? And then, are you familiar with the PLA question? Because that's the one that really scares the hell out of me.
In answer to you, I'll start with your second question. The answer is no. I'm not familiar with that. The first question, do I have any data on that? I would probably go with Centefront figures. Centefront, I don't think has any reason to lie about the data. So I did think this was interesting. I have had some very unusual encounters, some of which I dare not mention here. But I asked the Centefront commander if he was, interacting with anyone from the United States government, and a look of alarm came over his face. And he told me privately, yes, that there were people who were flown down to give instructions. And I said, now let's think about this for a second. You're a sovereign nation, and you're telling me that individuals from some unknown agency are flying down here to give you instructions on what you guys are and aren't supposed to do. And he more or less acknowledged that that was in fact the case. But I'll tell you this: when it comes to the data, pretty well everybody is lying. I personally think the number is much higher than 15 million, but I'm just giving you a gut reaction. So I don't know for sure. Let's hear from Philip.
Thank you. I have a question. Since you have a lot of connections,
Philip, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can't hear him speaking. Is he speaking?
Hi.
He's
Okay.
speaking. Stealth, he need
I'm
to go
going to drop
down.
you down. Andrew, jump in real quick. I'll bring him right back up.
Well, Larry, I'm glad that you said that because some officials, elected officials, are saying 20 million. So they may have more information than is out in the public. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there are so many players here, all with their own agenda, but they work as a single organism insofar as they're trying to bring people into the United States. Um, that's I don't think we can have any real idea what the numbers are. I'm not even sure the Biden administration has any real idea. I'm sure they can crunch the numbers of how many people they've flown into the United States, but I don't think they know how many people are coming across our southern border, and I don't think they care.
So have you ever been to the northern border? Because that's an issue too, or no?
You're talking about the United States border with Canada. Yeah,
Correct.
no, I mean, yes, I have been there many times. My mother's a Canadian, but no, not on this issue.
Okay, Philip, go ahead. And Larry, this article just came out that I wanted to cover about borders are Kamala Harris has unburdened herself of responsibility to secure the country. And that was something that I posted. So I want to read a little bit of that news, and excuse me, New York Post article after Philip. Go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, she had 3.5 years to do that, fix it, but didn't. So anyway, what I have a question for Larry, and thank you for being here because you have a lot of connections, and I guess Bree brought you over to help, being she's a journalist as well. I really think we need a non-government organization to sort out the security threats because the the American intelligence community hasn't fully been honest with not only the White House, but they're also not totally honest, in my humble opinion, with Congress. I think we need to set up like something like the Center for American Security Studies, where we can present papers similar to what my cousin works for at Rain Corporation, because he's an ex-Air Force officer. And where I'm going with this is we need to advise and create a think tank on what would be constitutionally appropriate to secure our borders, to deploy U.S. military at the border. What role can they play? Because of Posse Comitatus Act, they are directly prohibited from being involved with civilian enforcement. But I think immigration is a border issue. So I think constitutionally and through the Supreme Court, we can argue that it's a supported role for the U.S. military, and that I will include my Marine Corps. I think they would be very well suited to guard the border. But where I'm trying to go with this is people like you, people like Bree, people like Major John Spencer. Uh, I believe they have a role in a group like this, and I really think we should really concentrate on the American Center for Security Studies. And I will land my plane. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. My response is going to sound very cynical, but I think that all sounds very ivory tower. I don't think that founding any such organization would do any good unless you have people in office who are prepared to enforce the findings of an organization like that. And you see, we don't have that. We
Yeah,
have
but
right now.
I know, but Rand Corporation for years is involving and advising scientific bodies, military groups, as well as Congress on security, aeronautics, Russian stuff, Chinese. So I think
Sure,
we could.
pardon me, Philip. pardon me, Philip, I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying that they're not doing good stuff. What I'm telling you is that right now, we know it really isn't papers that need to be presented to Congress. Congress knows very well, as does the President of the United States, very well what they need to do. We have to have an enforceable border. We have existed as a nation for more than 200 years without the existence of think tanks that told us how that we needed borders. We have to have borders. We have to enforce existing border law, and we have immigration law, and we have every right to do it. But the problem is we have government agencies that are weaponized against the American people. And I should add this: the effort of Democrats at this point, I think they're preparing for two possibilities. One is to make sure that Trump is not president of the United States. The other is if by some disaster for them he becomes president of the United States, that they have so infiltrated and weaponized government agencies against him that he gets nothing done anyway. So you saw the problem when he was president and he wanted to build a border wall. You saw that didn't happen. When he wanted to slow down what was happening at the border, he was never able to stop it. And this problem continues. And so in my mind, it's not another NGO that we need. We need people in office. And listen, I've talked to U.S. senators, in regards to this. They're doing all they can, the guys who are on our side. The problem is you have rhinos and you have Dems who are doing everything they can to stonewall to prevent any of this from being enacted.
This is wild, Larry. Okay. So I just want to read this real quick. It may give us some perspective and numbers. Borders are Kamala Harris' record on the crisis at America's borders is now in sharp focus, and the increased scrutiny reveals one of failure and dereliction. Before examining that record, let's note that until just recently, it was uncontroversial to label the vice president as the borders are. I think it's really important we hit that home, by the way.
Yep.
She was officially tasked by President Biden on March 24, 2021 to lead, quote unquote, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle in stemming the movement of migration to our southern border. The Washington Post reported that Biden was giving Harris the lead role on the overall border and regional issue, while outlets like Axios even actually labeled her the border czar. Understanding then that Harris has long held responsibility for ending this self-inflicted crisis, Americans deserve answers on whether she followed through on her charge. The answer is a resounding no. On her watch, Customs and Border Protection has recorded approximately 10 million illegal immigrant encounters nationwide and more than 8 million encounters at the southwest border. Additionally, roughly 2 million known gotaways have evaded border control agents since fiscal year 2021. Encounters at official ports of entry have exploded from just under 20,000 in January of 2021 to more than 117,000 in June of 2024. From fiscal year 2021 through mid-July 2024, the Border Patrol has recorded 52,058 arrests of illegal aliens with criminal backgrounds, compared to 21,936 between fiscal years 2017 through 2020. Okay, apprehensions between ports of entry of individuals on the terror watch list have increased from just 14 in the previous 3-year period to 380 since fiscal year 2021. We all know it's much more than those numbers. I was quoting those numbers of those who know me since January of 2023. I was giving that warning to every Twitter space I was in. These numbers are not surprising considering Harris's past anti-enforcement advocacy. In 2015, she declared an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. That's a shocking statement from the then state attorney general, who either did not know or did not care that illegally entering the country is a federal misdemeanor and a felony for repeat offenses. Furthermore, the statement continues to define her approach to immigration enforcement. As a U.S. Senator, Harris advocated abolishing immigration and customs enforcement, saying we need to probably think about starting from scratch. She introduced legislation to strip hundreds of millions of dollars from ICE enforcement operations and called the construction of new border wall system a move supported by the overwhelming majority of Border Patrol agents. Just a stupid use of money, she quoted. But she has done her worst damage from her border czar position. Many of the policies Harris supported as a senator have been implemented on her watch, including cutting ICE beds, stopping border wall construction, and ending Title 42, the Trump era expulsion measure ordered during the COVID pandemic. On her watch, illegal crossings by those from Mexico and Northern Triangle countries currently exceed those seen during the Trump administration by an incredible 140%. So there was a difference.
Hey, Stealth, if I could,
Yeah.
jump in, that is a direct, that the triangle that is cited right there was a direct requirement placed upon her by her superior, President Joe Biden. She had two responsibilities, according to him, the day he placed her as a border czar. One of those was to figure out what was going on with the triangle and to handle diplomatically the issues that the United States is facing because of these countries, and she failed to do it.
So, after dismissing border visits as grand gestures, quotes, she has only made one highly scripted and sanitized trip to the southwest border in what a member of her own party called a politically safe check the box tour. And just recently we learned she has never spoken with the current Border Patrol Chief, Jason Owens, or his predecessor. Our border czar has repeatedly lied to Americans about the crisis. In September 2022, she falsely claimed on national television the border is secure. We have a secure border. In that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration. Now, I remember Karine Jean-Pierre twisting herself into 9 different types of pretzels when the White House pool went after her for those statements. Just somebody find those clips and DM them to me. I'll play one. That month that she said this, there were 272,338 encounters at our borders nationwide, the worst September in decades. She also viciously slandered mounted Border Patrol agents in Del Rio in furtherance of the fake whipping scandal. She has become a punchline to the cartels. In July of 2021, after she warned would-be border crossers not to make the journey, more illegal aliens were apprehended at the southwest border than any other month in decades, and millions more followed. According to former... Yes.
I was just going to suggest, can we post those articles and so that people can access those articles, and then maybe I can answer a few more questions before I take my wife out to dinner to celebrate our anniversary.
Fully understand. I've posted the main article, and I will cut it and splice it up so that people can look at those different links. It's all in the New York Post, and it's hyperlinked. So everybody, yeah.
Yeah, Larry, ignoring your wife on her anniversary might be more dangerous than the Darien Gap trip. So.
Well, there is I'm not yet to the point of actually ignoring, but we're celebrating 38 years. We were 3 when we were married, and
congratulations.
I told her that I would take her out to a nice dinner this evening. But I do want to answer any questions that people might have that are just based on my own experience traveling south of the border, engaging with some of these people, and on this issue. And I see a hand raised. Who do we have here? Robert?
I think it's Bailey.
Okay.
It works either way. It's Robert Bailey. So, I mean, that
there you
works.
Go. That's right.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. Look, didn't Reagan take care of this back in the 80s? Didn't he? Congress brought it up. They passed it, both sides, Democrat and Republican. They sent it to Reagan. He signed it, closing the border. It was closed. It was a done deal back in the 80s. And it was a law. It was to be closed. Only people were allowed to come in through diplomatic, ways, filling out the paperwork, coming in the right way. Other than that, it was closed. It was locked down. And now all of a sudden, the Democrats and the Republicans are using the same topic to gain votes with, either through shutting it down again or keeping it open. That's a talking point. Both sides are using as a talking point. But look, Reagan shut it down back in the 80s. It was a done deal. When it got reopened, I have no idea. I don't know the exact law that Reagan enacted. I can probably look it up and come back with it. But look, it was shut down. It was voted yay by the Democrats and the Republicans back in the 80s. It was closed border. except through legal means, and it was a done deal. Now it's just
Yep.
another nightmare all over again. And I'm not sure when it became a new nightmare, but it should have never been a new nightmare. It should have stayed closed like Reagan had it back in the 80s. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Thank you, Bailey. Larry, thoughts on that?
Well, listen, I loved Reagan, but unfortunately, he's not president of the United States, and we're dealing with people who are, they're following a globalist Marxist playbook, and this is a big part of their playbook. This is a way to cause societal, cultural, economic disruption. I've thought about naming the next book I write, "The Shitholing of America," because there's a kind of third worlding that is going on here, which is part of the plan. And to your point, Robert, listen, you do have. I wouldn't say that it's primarily Republicans, but there are plenty of Republicans who support this, and it's because it's cheap labor. So I find myself frequently in conversation with people who are Republicans, who are heads of companies, and who will say to me, "Look, white kids." They want to sit on the couch and play Nintendo. I need these guys, for my lawn care service, or as forklift drivers, or what have you, because they're having a hard time finding labor. That's a real issue, but this is not the answer. Other questions?
Hey, Larry.
Any other questions?
Hey, Larry.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so grateful for you to hold the space, and I hope that we have others to discuss this as we get closer and closer to the election, because I think, information is key. I posted at the beginning of this space one of the newest ads by Kamala's team, and I must say I was flabbergasted at the presentation. And I'm not sure if you saw this ad where she talks about her accomplishments. Um, I'm but I mean, it's beyond understanding, and the fact that we had AOC, posing in front of a parking lot, years ago, with that famous photo of her crying before an empty parking lot. Um, we are dealing with some very serious cases of human trafficking and children that are disappearing. And I'm wondering if you could hit on maybe just another personal story, if you have one, witnessing while you were on the ground there, of a case of human trafficking, or trafficking children for labor, that you witnessed or you heard from Border Patrol. Thanks.
Well, wow, Bree, that's a great question. I have so many stories. It's a matter of choosing one. Let me give you a a little glimpse of the way this often looks. Okay, so I'm going to these migrant camps, and it's called them camp. A camp is really a compliment to what they are. They're little more than cardboard boxes leaned up against walls and against each other, and blankets and anything that people have they can put over top of themselves for protection from the elements. And these migrant camps appear all over South and Central America, right up to Mexico City. So when I'm in Mexico City, my translator, she goes with me out to the very first day that I'm there. We go out. I tell her where I'm going, and she's blown away. She says to me afterwards, "I'm born and raised in Mexico City," and she said, "You've shown me today things I didn't even know existed in my own city." She said, "I had no idea these things are here," and of course, they're all over the place. But see, these people are often very vulnerable. So when I tell you that things have changed, even in just the last couple of months, the way it looks is when I was at a place called La Raza in Mexico City, that's mainly Spanish speaking migrants. So these camps tend to be made up of language groups. So the Afghans stick together, the Haitians, who are mostly French speakers, they stick together, and then Central and South Americans, as a rule, stick together, and then they create little communities within that from their own countries. Cartels now are operating these little tent cities. They weren't just a couple of months ago, but they are now. And what happens is children are frequently used. So let's just say you were to go on vacation, and I'd encourage you to do it. You can have a lovely vacation in Medellin or in Cartagena, but you're out on the streets and there are loads of children who are beggars, and this is all over South America. But let's just take Medellin or Cartagena in the touristy areas. You will see individuals, mothers, for instance, or maybe a man who has a child, perhaps even an infant, and is begging and says, I need money to feed my child. Very frequently, those children are rented. So they come to someone and they say, look, I'll give you, a couple of bucks. I need your child for the day. And those parents are very frequently in positions where they really don't have the opportunity to say yes or no. Some of the camps that you go to I was in Barranquilla, a place called, doggone it, what was the name of it? Querequitas, which means Little Caracas. And that place there is made up of Venezuelans and is incredibly dangerous. People murdered there, but children are being prostituted. And when I say children, I'm not talking like, 16-year-olds. That's happening too. And as awful as that is, but I mean, I'm talking like 7-year-olds. And now with the proliferation of a perverse sexual agenda globally, we're talking little boys and little girls who disappear. And when I was telling you before that I don't believe the numbers, the data, part of the reason I don't believe the data is there's two reasons. One is because you have so many different entities that are getting these people into the United States, and they're not sharing information with one another. That's one reason. Second reason is because some of these people are utterly undocumented. So I'm encountering people from, let's say, a guy from Ecuador. He's one of the indigenous peoples who comes from the mountains of Ecuador. There's no paperwork on his existence anywhere. No birth certificate, no passport, no CPB1, nothing. And that's not wholly uncommon with some of these people. So you begin to see the scale of the problem. And I told you at the outset that Colombia is the keystone to all of this. As Americans, we're not often very, very key, very, very good on our geography. Colombia is the northernmost country in South America. And if you're going to go through the Darien Gap, if you're not one of those lucky ones to be placed on an IOM, the UN NGO flights that are flying into the US, then your only way to get to the United States is on foot. And that means the Darien Gap. And the only way you can go through the Darien Gap is you have to go through Colombia. Colombia is almost twice the size of Texas. It is an enormous country. And it is only partially governed. So Bogota, Medellin, Cartagena, Barranquilla, these are governed, but there's parts of Colombia. Bear in mind that the Amazon rainforest, which extends into Colombia, is bigger than the contiguous United States. Most Americans think of, I say most, I don't have data on that, but many Americans that I talk to seem to think that the Amazon rainforest is like, Yosemite. It's like Yellowstone. No. We are talking massive, and there are indigenous peoples who have never been reached by the outside. And there are people who are moving through these places through Colombia to the Darien Gap and working their way up to the United States. Is there documentation on all these people? The answer is absolutely not.
Wow, that was amazing, Larry. I think Sunlight has maybe a final question. Do you have time for maybe one
Yeah,
more question?
I'll take one more, and I thank everybody for coming, and it's just a conversation we can continue, at another time. And again, ideas have consequences on YouTube. I'd love it if you came over there and subscribe to my channel there. If I may, Kaya, let me say this, and
Sure.
that channel is being suppressed big time. And when you subscribe to my channel, you probably will not get notifications. So if you look at the early episodes of Ideas Have Consequences, we were averaging 400,000 views per episode. And then, boom, YouTube began choking us. And one of the ways that they do that is they don't send out notifications when we drop a podcast. And we post a new one every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Central Time or thereabouts. Sometimes it takes a little longer to upload. Maybe it's 9 a.m. or something. But every Tuesday we post a new episode. Another way that they do it is they choke it with ads, figuring that most people won't stay around to watch. I do urge you to hang around. Another thing they do is they make it pinwheel. So you start to upload it and you just get the pinwheel and you're thinking for some reason it won't load. They're very devious about doing these kinds of things. But these are the kinds of things that we discuss, and we're trying to get this sort of information out there. And, I say that I'm your man in the field. I try very, very hard, and I actually want to have a conversation with Kaya about this. But the next place I intend to go is to Israel. And I've been in Israel, but I try very hard to be your man in the field in the sense that I'm not just pontificating from DC or New York and get up in my slippers and read a couple of podcasts and read a couple of papers and listen to a podcast or look at social media and then pontificate on my opinions. I'm trying to give you considered, thoughtful, studied opinions about things where I've been and where I'm going and where I'm engaging these people. And so maybe the next conversation we have might be about the World Economic Forum. I've spent an awful lot of time in Davos. I'm already scheduled to be back there in January of this year, and it's like sitting with a bunch of Bond villains. But we'll see if they get there. Let's see if they're on to me this year and they boot me out. But we'll find out. Maybe one more question here.
Sure. And everybody, do me a favor. Larry takes the time to come here and give us his experience, and his videos on YouTube are phenomenal on a range of subjects, not just theological.
Concur. 100%. 100%.
You would do yourself a
Yeah.
disservice
Been really well
to
done.
not follow his feed on Twitter. So as respect to me for coming to the space, if you wouldn't mind, I don't ask you guys a lot, please follow his account and Bree's account, especially. And any speaker from Up Here Sunlight's great. Andrew's phenomenal threads. We love Chet as well.
I'm a bit of a smart ass on Twitter too. I should also warn you that. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, well,
I apologize. I don't often have threads, but most of my stuff is like whistleblower stuff where I can't say anything unless it's in the record.
Hey, Self, I think you rubber banded just now.
Oh, sorry.
So I don't know. Sure. I want to make it clear that it seems like this space is getting botted quite a bit right now, or in the replies. Please just ignore that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
Clearly right now, what Larry has been talking about throughout this entire space,
we're way over the target.
Really important.
Yeah, we're way over the target. That's why. So there's 1,300 people listening and another 1,400 in the tunnel down below, which is in the other listeners. And sometimes they just go in there because there may be reporters or people with large accounts. They want to listen, but they just want to be anonymous because maybe they've never voted for Donald Trump before and they're trying to exit the Kamala Biden-Harris debacle and foreign policy issues and domestic policy issues. So we allow you in comfort to be below. But you can go to YouTube and nobody will know. And you can follow Larry's account there. It's free. You're just clicking on Let Me Get Updated. And his podcasts are phenomenal and they're well thought out of. And I'm sure he's about to do another one on Candace Owens because she's gone full tilt again, Larry.
She absolutely has.
She's like
There's
providing
no question about that.
content.
And that
Like,
would be an interesting discussion that we have
yes,
as well. But are there any more
Please.
questions for me, guys?
yes.
Before I have
Sunlight, go ahead.
to here.
Sunlight, and then he's going to go
Yeah,
to his
so
wifey.
yeah, I would say please retweet the space too self. I think we only have like 52 retweets at this point and over 1,000 listeners. But Larry, congratulations again on I think you said 38 years of marriage. You got married when you were 3, so that must have been one hell of a episode of Romper Room
Well, we were
going on
high
there.
school sweethearts. We were married at 19, and it says a lot for my wife's forbearance that she's put up with me for that long. So,
Yeah.
but it has been wonderful, and we're looking forward to a nice evening. Can I answer a question for you? Let's go.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. Yes, sir. I have one more. I have one more question for you. So, you jogged my memory when you said that one of the camps you went into, one of the sub camps that you went into was La Raza, which is the race. There was an organization that is kind of reemerged here called La Raza Unida, the Race United, and they are actively. It's a Marxist organization, and they are actively promoting the idea of the reconquista, the reconquest of the southern states in America.
well,
Saying that they were, yeah, they were stripped, unfairly. Arizona, New Mexico, California, Tejas, so they were stripped. Colorado were stripped from Mexico unfairly, after the Mexican American War. And so I'm just curious, if you're not if you haven't run across that overtly, it's very subtle type thing. But I'm hearing that it is an active movement. If as if we didn't have enough to worry about
sure.
with terrorist organizations
I,
and other
I'll
things.
comment on that in just 1 second. I'll tell you what. Let's go to Daffy here. If I'm apologize if I'm not saying the name.
Yeah, Daffy's great. I'm glad she came in. Go ahead, Daffy.
I'm so glad you gave me a mic. I've been hiding down in the listeners, the anonymous, but I came in because when you talked about, thank you, Stealthy. I love these spaces. They're just like it's like a graduate seminar with
Aren't these
guest
great?
speakers. They're so great. Larry, thank you. I know you got to go be with your wife, and I'm going to Venmo or Cash App you a bottle of champagne for
Aren't you
all
sweet?
your work that you've done for this group. It's Friday News Cycle. I just wanted to say, I had 2 things. One, I question how many of the military-aged males are coming in. I think a lot of these guys want to make money and send the money to their families and bring them over here. And that's why they aren't bringing their families, because like you said, they're in a monopoly board of, pass go, pay $200, go back to the border, come back. There's that. I don't think every person is a criminal. I think a percentage of them are unvetted people who are gotaways and they're in here, and we need to watch our
Correct.
backs. But I do believe, and I'm saying this because we have multiple businesses and we pay immigrants to come in, like they're from Guatemala, they bring their cousin, and we pay them $100,000 to work, and they will work their asses off. They do, like my mom has a big house, they do her gardening, they do construction work for her. We've got other companies, I don't want to say what they are, but we send them around and they do work, and they work so hard, and they're Catholic, and they love their mothers, and their work ethic is impeccable. And so we've got these kinds of people who really do want to come into our country and work. Then we've got other people. And what I wanted to ask you is how many of these who are coming in, not going to work for Apple in Silicon Valley, and I say this because my mother-in-law is an immigration attorney and she processes all of that paperwork. So I know that those are the Chinese people who are coming in and from India and wherever, and they want to get a job in Silicon Valley. But not those people. I'm talking about the people who left during COVID. They left the Central Valley of California to go back to Mexico because the whole country was completely shut down. What percentage would you say are those people just coming back?
Ugh. I haven't a clue, Daffy, but you have teed me up nicely. You've laid a nice slow pitch over the plate for me, that I can address something that's very much related to what you're saying and that I really want to leave people with. And I feel like I'm the only person saying this. And that's this. The vast majority of these people that I'm talking to fall into the category that you have just described to a T, Daffy. The vast majority of them, in my opinion, they are not natural residents of the Democrat Party. These are people who are fleeing, in many instances, fleeing socialism. They are pro-family. They are broadly Catholic. You mentioned the word socialism, which translates very nicely into Spanish, and you can see the look on their face of total disgust. They know what a lie that it is, and often they're people who want to work. And I was talking to um, a Trump campaign advisor last week, and I don't know if this messaging is going to come through in their campaign or not. But I had said, look, watching the Republican National Convention, the first image I see is all these white people in the front row holding up signs that say "Make America Wealthy Again." That is not the right message. I mean, yes, people don't want to be overtaxed, and absolutely, we want to revive the economy. The Democrat Party is, if you remember nothing else from this space, please remember this. They're fundamentally anti human. They hate children. They absolutely hate children. The kind of Joseph Mengele type stuff that we see happening to children in the United States right now is absolutely appalling. The annihilation of the unborn, the anti-human policies. You listen to them at the World Economic Forum. All they can talk about is saving the planet, and they're openly talking about reducing the global population, which you will see. I just did a podcast on this. Kamala Harris, which they now claim she misspoke, talking about reducing the population. This is all part of who they are. They talk openly of reducing the global population from roughly 8 billion to 2 billion. This is who they are. We need to be pro-human, pro-child. We're pro-family. Come over here. We want to make a difference for you. We want to make your lives demonstrably better. We're going to stop sending billions to Ukraine. We're going to improve your infrastructure, and we're going to get government out of your way. That's the kind of messaging I feel like we need. And as this relates to the immigrant issue, what this person was telling me, I don't think he would mind me saying this, is that the Hispanic vote is the kind of great undecided vote. And I was saying, look, these are people these are people who are pro-American. They're not out for a reconquest of the border states. These are individuals who are fleeing socialism. They're generally speaking fairly religious, and they're fairly hardworking. They want a future for their families, for their children. But let me tell you, if the Republican Party's message is we hate immigrants, we're going to load you all up on cattle cars and deport you, you're never going to win that vote. And they need them. They need them. And I think the message needs to change. I think they need to speak up. These are people who want a sensible border policy once they're in the United States. They definitely do. And they don't like illegal immigration because they have to compete against it. And so I think the message needs to be one. Philip had said earlier that we needed an NGO about the border. I disagree with that, but I do think we need some real NGOs, some non woke NGOs, some Catholic, some Protestant, some secular ones that are seeking to help these people who are here. I mean, they're here. We can complain about it all we want, but millions of them are here, and teaching them the Democrat Party is your enemy. They don't care about you. And secondly, this is what it means to be American. I find that message resonates in all these camps. where I'm talking to these people and I'm explaining to them the politics of the United States. They have all heard that Donald Trump and the Republican Party hate them all, and that the Democrat Party loves them all. And I say this is not an accurate narrative. So I think we need to be careful in what messaging we're sending as it relates to this, because it is driving these people into the arms of the Democrat Party, who is going to harvest all their ballots in November.
Oh my, Larry, just you're so on point on this. There's one lady that came up, Mafalda. She's from Chile. Do you have 30 seconds maybe to hear from her?
Sure, I'd be delighted.
Go ahead, Mafalda.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, when I was 16 years old, I went through the communist dictatorship of Salvador Allende. And certainly later on, we had the best president in our country, who was Pinochet, was civil and army government was combined. And we become the best country in all Latin America. Until now, our economy is one of the best. But what I want to say, going back to the point of Hispanic people here in the United States, you need to be very clear in the point where it is the legal Hispanic community and the illegal.
Absolutely.
Most the legal Hispanic people here in the United States. By the way, I am 30 years here in the United States. My husband was Vietnam veteran, and I am very much into what it means to be an American and be grateful for this nation. So evidently, I know exactly what my community feel like. My community is hardworking people, and we don't like illegals. No matter from where they come from. Why? Because we pay our fee. Do you all know when you file for citizenship, the first form you need to pay is going to cost you at least $900. In the end, until you pay all the forms and follow the procedures, the legal procedures in the United States, you're going to end up spending almost $4,000 or $5,000. Why? Because you need to have a lawyer who's going to advise you to do the right things. So certainly, most of the Hispanic people, especially in California, I live here in Arkansas now. At least my friend and the people I know, they're sick and tired of what's going on there. Why? Because they are working people. We like to work. We are family. We are family orientated, and we are Christians. And we're not going to accept the Muslim come to tell us we cannot worship a God or Christ or whatever stupid things they're telling us. That is one thing. Second, illegals, we are hardworking people, and we know what we went through to become citizens. And certainly it's unfair for the people who are in the system right now waiting. Some people 10 years to bring their children or their family members to and by the right way, following the law to United States. So what Kamala had, whatever she say, or Biden has said, I tell you what, if you talk with most of my people in Latin America, which I have friends all over, because I'm also advocate for victims of communism right now here in the United States. Everybody, sick and tired with Biden and Kamala. And we take it personal. And I'm going to explain you, all of you, why. Because most of the American people don't understand every time when you vote, you don't vote only for the good of the United States. You also vote for the good for the region. Because whatever president you have here in the United States, their policies are going to affect right away to Latin America. So certainly we want back Trump. And everybody in Latin America want back Trump. Why? Because he also going to help us to kick out all those communists and socialists from our governments. And that is seriously true, you know?
Thank you.
Now,
oh, sorry.
the media, hold on. The media can say whatever, but I tell you what, now, Elon Musk unified with President Trump. And I tell you what, all Latin America is dancing of happiness for that because that is a hope. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say today. It's two different type of immigrants, the legals and the illegals. We don't want the illegals, and Hispanic community don't want the illegals. That's simple. And here in Arkansas, I tell you here in this region, where is the Bible Belt? No, we are waiting with our rifles and our pistols. They're not going to come here to burn cities, and they are not going to come to make mess like they did in Washington, they did in Illinois and California and all this stuff. No. Listen, I am a Republican because President Trump, and I know very well what the people do and think here in this area. Most of the family have veterans, and we are pissed off of what is going on. And we're not going to let that happen. If they think they're going to steal the election, believe me, these guys over here are ready for fight back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mafalda.
Mafalda, if I may, pardon me, Steph. If I may, I have met, first of all, I loved what you had to say. I love your passion. I appreciate your comments. I have met 1,000 Mafaldas in Central and South America. And I come back and I say to my wife, you know, Lori, I would exchange every Democrat I know for a few of these people because they're very frequently share those kinds of opinions. And Lori and I have helped some come to the United States legally. We had a Colombian woman with us all summer, and she came into the United States legally. She was dating my son, and I'd met her in Colombia, and we told her we would assist her for a legal process and helped her go through the process at the U.S. Embassy in Bogota and brought her here. And there are others that we have done the same for, people that we feel share our values, meaning broadly speaking, American values, and who don't want to just siphon off the system and are looking for a good future and who are trying to escape an awful past. I am all in favor of those kinds of people coming into the United States legally, properly. It's the criminal element they're obviously trying to keep out. But I agree with what she had to say. Hispanics are the political future of any kind of viable Republican Party, because white people, first of all, aren't reproducing, and a lot of black people simply do not vote. And so Hispanics are generally very politically engaged. And for whatever reason, the messaging often is just simply not there. But I hope I've said something that's been useful to you. I'll be
Larry, can
happy
I
to come back
correct
on
you on
again.
something? Can I correct you on something?
Yes, ma'am.
We, the Hispanic people, we are not perfect. And you need to be careful because you're going to find crap too. I'm sorry, the words. There in California, remember, they took over California and they destroyed. So you guys, the American people who you have family who came here in this country and you build the country, you build your culture. Well, if you don't have Hispanic people who are willing to do the change and immerse in the culture, forget it. You know, they
Well,
destroy countries too.
that of course is true. That's true with every sort of ethnic background, because we're dealing with what concerns me most, and we haven't even touched on it here. But quite frankly, I'm deeply concerned about the importing Muslims into this country who do not share our values in any way, shape, or form. And some of you may say that you know some Muslims who do. Those are Muslims who are more or less fuzzy Westerners and are Muslim in name only. The real Muslims are the ones that we call radicals. Radicals aren't radicals, they're Orthodox Muslims. And they're the ones who take seriously the Hadith, the Quran, and they're supposed to model their lives after Muhammad. and that's not a model you want, and it's not what we want in the United States. And that's a conversation we can have from my experiences in Europe and in Africa and elsewhere. But there's just nothing good about that is brought into the United States. I don't want a single Muslim brought into the United States, because they cannot say that they hold these truths to be self-evident. They don't believe that all people are created equal. They don't believe the basic tenets of what it means to be American, traditionally speaking. So I see that as highly problematic. But again, I hope you'll follow me over on Twitter, and you can follow me on my YouTube page. We're on Rumble and some other places that the staff puts us. To be honest, I don't know where all we are, but I do know we're on YouTube. Ideas have consequences. I want to thank Kaya and Bree for putting this together, because I'm clueless about all this. Ladies, thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I hope you have a wonderful anniversary. And I'm gonna handle some of the hands that are waiting down below. And
wait, before Larry
yes.
goes.
Oh, and it's Carolina's birthday, everybody. And Carolina, go ahead, Carolina, real quick for Larry.
Yes, I wanted Larry to hear this because I was going to tell her in Spanish the following, and then I'll repeat it in English. Me tienes que ayudar para dejarle saber a todos los hispanos que Kamala es una pestosa y que ella no es buena para ningún país y mucho menos para Estados Unidos. So I think I understand Spanish, so I will tell you that we're having to team up to tell all the Hispanics that Kamala is a stinky woman who's very bad for this country and every country. So we have to start a campaign on how to
Well, I don't
explain
know
it
what
to
everybody else heard, but what I heard was Kamala is a bitch in Spanish. But anyway,
Casi. Yes, almost there.
well, I'm gonna run now. My wife just came in. I'm colorblind, and she just told me my clothes don't match, so I have to change. You guys take care. Love y'all coming in.
Larry,
Talk
one
to you
more thing
soon.
you want to know. I just witnessed in Spain right now where I am at, a group of, I think there were refugees literally beating up this person. I took the video. I will send the video up to probably a journalist and have them branded and put it on a network. And then I just also posted a video of a bouncer in Spain as well, literally murdered in front of the camera, beaten up as well. I sent that earlier in the back channels. I'll send it to you again. So I need you guys to help expose, because see, you ask all the people here. I had a lady in the metro, I speak a lot to people, and they said to me, no, yo pienso que Kamala va a estar bien. She's a good option for, that's what I was told here in Europe, that Kamala is the better option right now. So they're still under media influence. Elon Musk said it correctly earlier that Europe is literally brainwashed with the media. So
Well, they still don't even know that Biden administration blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. I mean, they're told nothing. They have no idea.
They don't even know that Trump was almost assassinated the other day.
Yeah, there's more or less a media blackout there. But Kaya, Bree, thank you, ladies. Y'all
Thank
take
you.
care.
Have a good night, sir.
Bye, Larry. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. And thank you, Haya, for bringing up my birthday. It's my birthday, big 40.
Happy birthday, Carolina.
Feliz cumpleaños.
Hey, Stealth, I just want to jump in
Yes,
now.
go ahead, Andrea.
Did Larry leave? I don't want
He
to
did.
interrupt.
No, he did. Go ahead, Andrea.
He did? Okay, because my screen's been messed up for a week. Breaking, the Supreme Court struck down Title IX. This is awesome.
It's a very big deal.
Awesome. No more males competing in
Huge story.
Huge.
Did you make a post about it,
children
Andrea,
are
so we
safe,
can
or girls
share?
are safe? I'm sorry,
Did you
say that
make
again,
a
please.
post about it so we can share it?
Yes, I did.
Send me.
How long
Sure.
before we can get
I will.
tampons in to take the tampons out of the boys' bathrooms in Minnesota?
Tim's tampons that he's trademarked and has a box of them. Those ones, the Tim's tampons walls. They ordered like 10 million during COVID at $250 million. And I'm sure the Somali warehouse units are holding them too. And eventually there'll be a DOJ investigation like there is now, but the COVID funds for food.
Did you say they're in the Somali warehouse?
Warehouse, not whorehouse. I said warehouse, just to be precise.
God, I don't know what I walked into.
No. This is a very professional space, but we were talking about that during COVID, there was a $250 million fraud of money taken from Minnesota that was supposed to be given to children who do not get food other than when they're at school. and they never delivered a single ounce of food to any children. And can you imagine how many kids went without food for the entire time that they were stealing money? And that was a whole scam that was going on during the Somali community, and the DOJ and the FBI investigated it. And a lot of the people had left the country and fled all over the world, and others bought all sorts of things. It's a huge scandal. And Ilhan Omar and Walls and others that they're involved with were directly responsible, and nobody's been held accountable for that at their level, because there's no way that kind of fraud could have occurred.
Oh, they will, but you understand that right now, Walls is, they're getting ready for the DNC, right?
No, but that story,
and all of this is
that's a year-old story at least.
What I'm saying, all of this stuff is background stuff that is now being investigated. Like when we brought up the coin situation, and that went viral, and been talking about his Walls's, inflation of his service record and his claim of a rank that he did not earn. What's interesting is that I kept getting pinged in the back channel saying, don't put this out there yet. Let him get through the DNC first before, you start to expose, because that's when, I'm a journalist, so I report on what is the news, right? But I guarantee you that there are activists right now gathering up all of this information to start hammering them once once it gets going after the DNC. And I think a preview to this is the fact that even now NPR and other news organizations from the very far left have been reporting on Walls's inflation of his military record and his claim to the rank that he did not earn. So I think it's an important thing that that all came from X. All of it came from X. So
it's true, and kudos to everybody that brought it out, because I'm a small account by all measures when it comes to the big accounts. I only have 15,000 reaching 1,500 or 15,300, and my post alone got 67,000 views. So can you imagine all of the views that went out, total views from all the big players? It's great.
Right. That's why it needs to, obviously the reason why, Andrea, your account we can reference your account is that you provide the evidence directly in front of, you have the evidence, you have the sourcing right there, which sadly we see with a lot of journalists who don't want to do the footwork to be able to corroborate. So, but on the coin story, when I put that out there, when I started to feed it to the network of journalists that I knew would be interested in the story, I had done my own corroboration behind the scenes with sourcing that I couldn't put on record. And within, I would say, an hour of me posting that story that went super viral, I got tagged by just a small account, and I sourced him, a small account who referenced a Wall supporter putting the picture of the coin on his social media, who ended up blocking me. But the internet lives forever. So, but he ended up blocking me, and then he ended up deleting the post. This Wall supporter, but you don't get that gets as close to cooperation, hard cooperation that you can get in the way of factual evidence when his own supporter is showing the evidence. So we just have to keep doing that when it comes to Stealth. Your the story that you just brought up has to be triple checked with multiple corroboration, and put out there as we start to go, contact journalists to corroborate on their own. But that evidence has to be there as we start to go forward. And it's the same thing. I mean, look, it's obvious that they have not been smart in how they presented themselves and that they're lying. And when I say they, I do mean the Harris Walls, team. It's one thing to say that, hey, I have, these are my policies that I'd like to enact. It's another to say that your record stands as borders are in your ad, and then completely lie about all of the presentation that you do in that ad. That's going to come back.
Yeah. Hey, Bree, to that
Hey,
point,
Bria, I have a suggestion if you're interested. It's really important to back up your research, like you said, with facts. I was wondering someday, since you have a long history of experience in it, if we could have a space on how to do accurate reporting. Because, I mean, I learned it I don't know how I learned it, but it would be important for the people that want to become journalists, independent journalists. That would be awesome.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And it's not a trade secret. In fact, if you have kids, your kids learn how to write book reports. It's very similar to writing book reports when you're
with
writing
references.
I mean, obviously, yeah, with references. The story, long and short, is never make the story about you. Make it about the evidence and the facts in front of you, and be as very clear as possible and concise as possible. And just, if like overwhelming evidence is supposed to support and allow people to make their decisions based off of the evidence that you provide, not on your, obviously your pontificating.
and I think it's
And sadly, we see that in
so
the news.
important to point out that we're in an information war, and the work that you do, Bree and Carolina and Andrea, with and Stealth with your citations. I mean, it's so important that we retweet that, because become force multipliers. We have 1,000 people living in here, and if half of them took the good information and retweeted it, and then that gets retweeted, I mean, we're talking about an exponential information warrior army, if you will. So,
and bookmark those posts. Okay, I want to go to some of the hands. I want to hear from.
So
Oh,
that's what Stealth.
yeah.
I just want to jump in real quick. Sunlight made a very good point, and what's really important to elevate it is not only bookmark. This brings it up in the algorithm. It gives it to the people that are in your timeline but don't necessarily follow you. Bookmark, reply. Likes are good, but they don't really do much. And quote, retweet, put your comments so it gets to a larger audience.
Andrea, and then tell them to sign up with me so that they know a lot more than what you're spilling the beans on helping everybody here.
Of how to become a citizen journalist.
Yeah, well, I mean, Carolina, she understands how to get attention of the media and how you go about the whole entire process.
Yes, and it's so engaging because it's almost a system. It's almost kind of like an algorithmic process that once you know, yes, once you know the structure is very simple. You'll notice, your post getting certain boosting. For me, it's good to stay like under the radar. Like I don't want any exposure, but like for the people that are the mouthpieces, the people that need to have the exposure, like Bree said, and like Andrea said, just talk with receipts, bring your proof, show your work, make it less about you, but definitely have the content be what people want to see. And I think Haya does a really great job when she does this. And I really want to thank everybody for supporting. I see so many people that have been with us, since literally day one. And without your support, none of this could happen. None of this would be happening. So it takes a lot of people. And again, there are a lot of back channel people that are not seen or known that are feeding articles and information. A lot of people enjoy the back end. And, if you want to continue to support, just write one of us. You want to be engaged and you want to stay in the back end, and how, we do this. I'm all about crediting people. I'm all about, just thanking everybody. But the reality is that there are people who just don't really want it and don't need it. They just want to do the work. They want somebody to put it out there. And I think those people are so valuable, and you know who you are down there. And you mean everything to us. I wish I could shout you out, but I know you probably kick my butt. And then I also want to give a chancla to Sunlight for calling me Carolina. It's Carolina.
So good.
And then it's over. My birthday's over where I am, so I'm so sad. You guys can still celebrate my birthday in America.
Birthdays are for a whole month. Okay, I want to go to just Carmen, and then I'm going to go to Daffy and Lumisel and then Zapata. Go ahead, and then the guys. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I wanted to follow up on what you were talking with Larry about. I am Puerto Rican, and I was raised in a very conservative household. And the Republican Party has never spoken to me. I have tried several times to listen, to understand the platform, but I've never felt welcomed. And so I wanna give you a little trajectory. I'm from New York, but I now live in California. I've been here since 2011, and I love this state. It is beautiful and magnificent, but what has made me what I was once a lifelong Democrat, I am now an independent, a registered independent, and I will most likely be voting for Trump for the first time uh, this November. And I want to tell you why. I have seen firsthand. I live in the Bay Area in California, and I have seen firsthand what the policies that Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and the entire Democratic Party have done to a city, particularly San Francisco and Oakland, have done. Cities that were once absolutely beautiful. And I'm not saying they were perfect, because no city, no state, no country is. There were always problem areas, but not to this level. It is surreal. There are times when we go into Oakland or we'll go into San Francisco, and the stench of human feces, having to be careful if you walk down the wrong street and not feeling safe. I can't even imagine being in a third world country and feeling more unsafe than I have felt in certain areas of San Francisco. I want to send a message that I've had enough. I'm all for giving people opportunity and giving people second chances, but more importantly, I believe in public safety. I believe in law and order. And I want my fellow Californians, as well as my fellow Americans, to live in a safe country, in a safe community with good schools, law and order, respect for police, respect for the military. And that message is lost on the Democratic Party. I did not change my values or my convictions. They did. So decided that I had had enough, and I left the Democratic Party. But if I think some of you are Republicans, if I could give you a word of advice, is that you do not reach out to the Latino community. We are not a monolith. We are different. Central Americans, South Americans, and Caribbean. Like I said, I'm Puerto Rican. We are not a monolith. And the message can't always be that we're illegal, that we're drug runners, most of us are. Again, I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, which is a fundamentalist Christian religion. We are conservative. We are anti-abortion. We believe in family. We believe in God, and we believe in love of country. And you should speak to us this way.
Just Carmen, I love what you said. You need to come back to my spaces. I worked in many hospitals that are Seventh-day Adventist hospitals, or individuals are Seventh-day Adventists. Ben Carson is a Seventh-day Adventist. He and Donald Trump have the most respectful, loving relationship I've ever seen. He's an African-American man, a very religious Seventh-day Adventist. The man's a genius. The mother literally was a single mother with 2 children, working nearly 18 hours a day, came from nothing and nowhere. And she had the values and morals and had 2 sons, both geniuses, one that separated the first conjoined twins and then ran for president, and God willing will be again in Trump's office. He was working with HUD, and treats his wife like she's literally his other half in the most beautiful ways. So I love the Seventh-day Adventist religion. There's so many beautiful things about it. I can guarantee you that if you look at the nuances of the Conservative Party, we understand exactly what you're saying, and I have such a history of understanding. I know people that were trafficked into America A lot of them, I would go to nanny agencies when my son was little, and I didn't know their stories. And they were amazing religious people. They all ended up moving back to their home countries, El Salvador, Mexico City, Guatemala. And they just, because the crime got so bad in America, the costs got so bad that they had to leave. And even though they're making cash here and everything, and they would live in, and I would send them to school because they had children and their husbands were being killed, and their fathers and their sons, because of the cartels in South America, and they had to provide for their families. And what they went through crossing in, yes, with the traffickers and everything, but all of them were such great American citizens. They went to school. They had a love for this country. They're just like, the country changed on them. They were living in states, or when they were working for me, they were living in states, and they had student visas when they came through the agencies. But then those student visas expire, and you want to give them a path towards citizenship because they were contributing to the economy. They were paying rent. They were trying to buy houses. They were doing the right things. Both of my housekeepers married Americans that they met in church. I mean, and they still decided to go back to raise their children in their home countries, because here they're like, what they're teaching their kids in school is horrific. What it was, their kids had depression they'd never even heard of in their home countries. Yes, violence and everything like that was a problem, but they were able to move to different areas in South America than they had been before. So what's been done to California by Gavin Newsom and by even Kamala Harris back in the day, they've destroyed a whole state. They've literally moved every business out of there. They've done lawfare against anybody during the time of COVID. They pressured parents to force their kids to have vaccines at 5 years old. They wouldn't let parents in to school plays unless they had their third vaccine. And all the while, Gavin Newsom's kids were not taking the COVID vaccines. And there's so much stuff that the left has done. I can guarantee you, for whatever reason, some individuals never voted conservative before. You may have thought about some big topics, right, that maybe you didn't feel comfortable with, or you don't like the way somebody said something. But at the end of the day, the left and the DNC and the Marxists and the communists that you've seen come up for the last 20 years have given nothing to their people. And the number one thing a woman has to think about before they think about abortion, before they think about anything, is our personal safety. It is, and our ability to protect ourselves with a weapon. I cover nearly 24/7 about borders 1A and 2A in the US, because in Israel, they do not have the ability to have a gun as a woman. Women there died on October 7th in the most horrific ways, and we're not able to protect ourselves. Women in America should be the strongest voters for 2A. They should completely vote for gun rights consistently. I know it's scary because there's school shootings, etc., etc. But the frequency of that is minor compared to the amount of crime that happens against women in this country in some of the most expensive cities in the world. And we are defenseless unless we protect our 2A rights. And the only people I know that are trying to do that are conservatives on the right. A single voter issue for me is my ability to protect my body. Because when I watched the videos on Telegram, what happened October 7th, my biggest anger was these women didn't have a fighting chance to protect themselves. And in Israel, there's mandatory service for women. So they've all gone through training. So the fact that women over there had their guns taken away from them and were limited, and they have such strict gun laws in Israel, right? Because they don't want the guns stolen and taken by terrorists. I get all that. Meanwhile, there's still 350,000 illegal guns owned by Arab Israelis in Israel. Okay? That's just in Israel. And the regular women like us, right? You think of San Francisco, you think of LA, you can think of San Diego, you can think of the border areas now. Every single state, if you're a woman listening here and you're a lefty and you hate what Donald Trump says, this is the only party that's going to preserve the right for you to protect your body in perpetuity. So think like that, because if I tell you what happened and how these women, the ones that did have guns, because in the villages, like in the areas by Gaza, that they had them locked up, and in the event that they were currently like maybe former police officers or whatever, they had maybe one gun between her and her husband, and they put their twins inside of a bunker, locked the door, and they had a shootout with the terrorists. And a husband and wife both died, and they'd spent 8 years waiting to have kids as a miracle for these amazing couple, childhood sweethearts. Okay, both of them phenomenal citizens. I don't care if they were on the right or left. She went down swinging. Okay, the things that they did to other women, they didn't do it to her, and the only thing that separated her from them was that ability for self-defense. So if you're a woman in here and you still think about voting for anybody else other than Donald Trump or any future candidate that doesn't think about a woman's right to protect herself, not to protect yourself so you can have sex with whoever you want unprotected and have an abortion. No, the only protection you need to worry about as a normal person who doesn't want to get sick from other reasons is the ability to protect your female body so that you don't have to be afraid to run. And a pregnant mother got killed by somebody, as we know, in the South just recently. And this person was wanted not only in South America for prior crimes, but here in America. Okay, it does happen. And it doesn't have to be that person, it could be any person. But this is what I want you to think about, Just Carmen. Of every decision you've ever made, the taxes at 50%, property taxes, the inability even to do construction on your home, because Gavin Newsom has made it impossible, okay, to live in a state that was the number one producer in GDP nearly in America, and every company wanted to be here, and every person wants to live in California, and now people are running. Even the lefties are running. So that's all I want to say about that. I'm going to go to some hands. Sorry for my tirade. You guys know I always do my little speech. Okay, Daffy, go, and then I'm going to go to the other ladies, Lumi, and then we're going to go to the gentlemen. Go ahead, Daffy.
Bravo, bravo, bravo. I mean, I live in California, so it is, we went from $200 a square foot to build to now $650 a square foot. And that's just like a moderate, okay house because of Gavin Newsom. I mean, it's crazy. And then he's getting kickbacks from PG&E so that he has de-incentivized solar panels and other forms of energy so that you have to use electricity, and then he's getting whatever. PG&E, out of the 12 constituents that Gavin Newsom has, they're one of his tops. And that's why an electric bill in California is between $700 and $900. It's crazy. But did Jess Carmen, is she still here?
Yeah, she's here.
Okay, lady, your story, I feel like, because I fled San Francisco. I went to UC Berkeley, and I was a Democrat when I lived in San Francisco because I was raised in Northern California, and it was just the way it was. You were like, Democrats were the educated scholars who went to places like Oxford, Cambridge, NYU, Harvard, Yale, and UC Berkeley. And so when I was there, I took most of my undergrad in graduate courses, and so I only hung out with all the grad students, and I prided myself on the fact that all of my posse were PhD candidates, and I was friends with all the professors in the whole San Francisco Bay Area. Well, all of that has changed. It's a mess. And it changed when Gavin Newsom, he lost his first attempt at governorship, and then he got in as a lieutenant governor under whoever it was. So I don't keep track of him. But I will say, it's not the Republicans that don't have a voice for you and don't speak to you. It's the Republicans. So the people who are voting for Donald Trump are not Republicans. They are America First. It is a new movement. He is under the MAGA, America First, Republican National Committee platform, and I think this is only going to be the last. I have a feeling there's going to be a new party that's built up off of this election. And the MAGA people, we welcome Latinos. I live on a street that's like, I would say 40% Latinos live on my street. I do everything I can to give them jobs. I hire them to do my landscaping, clean my house, put my bike together, help me put my treadmill together. I mean, I will do anything to help them. They are the cleanest, most expedient people I've ever met. They're so amazing. And they send all their money to their mothers in Mexico. I mean, and not just Mexico, wherever wherever they're from. They're here to make money for their families. It's not just them. And they do have children, and they do go to church, and they're a really good, hardworking, honest people. They're way more hardworking and honest than your average person you're going to see like working at McDonald's or something. And a lot of my friends are from Puerto Rico. My friend Nilda Conde, she's one of the biggest military defense contractor minorities. An A8, I believe, is what they're called in the U.S. government. They get government contracts because she did because she's a minority woman, and so there is a place for people who are not Democrats, but there's like you're independent now, but I think like the Trump Vance ticket is going to then break apart, and it's going to be Vance Trump Jr. in 2028. So there is a legacy that's forming within the party. And like Stealthy said, get a gun. I have 4 guns. I live in California. I had to jump through hoops to get them. And it's like, I did it because during COVID, they were shutting down ammo. You couldn't buy it in the stores. If you want to buy ammo, you had to go to Idaho. Like that's Gavin Newsom's California. If Dianne Feinstein hadn't died, they would have enacted like a major gun control legislation. But now, who knows what's going to happen with that?
Danfy, they literally tried to roll her in near dead. She died like 2 days later. And the thing with during COVID, is they simply sold out. So many people, because of the summer of love and the threats in the cities, bought weapons and bought bullets and were stocking up because a lot of the manufacturing places were shut down. But really, it was a shortage supply, and also the government limited how much they could produce. This was another interesting thing that occurred. So anyways, we could talk about that later, but yes, but it
that, and we were getting a lot of our ammo from China, and they stopped importing it because of God knows what.
Well, there's other reasons for that, yeah. Okay, thank you. Let's go to Lumi, and then we're going to the guys.
Steph, can I just I just want to add to just Carmen real quick. Most Republicans support the Hispanic community. Myself personally, I was involved with traveling internationally, both personally and professionally, and the Hispanic community is the most precious community. I would make a point to go outside of the city to the small towns for entertainment at night. Not entertainment because I think they were subjects, but it just warmed my heart to watch the families gather in the churches, in the town square. Many of the towns were very poor, but they were very family oriented. I can't stress enough how much most of the conservatives in the Republican Party support you. I don't know what type of support mechanism is there in regards to reaching out during a presidential campaign, but we definitely need to improve that. So thank you very much for coming up.
You're very welcome. Can I just respond real quick?
Yes, I'm next. Hello.
Yeah, yes, Lumi. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Lumi.
Yes.
I miss
Hi,
you.
everyone. ¿Cómo están todos aquí en la casa de Stealth? Así. The reason I want to go back to the Kamala border crisis, and we seem to have a sort of a chain of command going on here with HIAS, the Catholic Charities, and the United Nations, and then the gentleman that you had on earlier. What was his name? The gentleman that was
Larry.
Larry, yes. He said he wants to go to Davos if they let him in. So where are we going with this? Because I want some solutions. I want to know, what do we do? Because it seems that the intentions were good to begin with, and everything was working just fine until many other factors came in, and those many other factors were the drug cartels, people making money off of, the trafficking. So many. You're well aware of this. So where do we go from here, Bree? Could you answer that for me? She's not home, is she? No, ya se fue la chingada.
I'll bring her down. I'll bring her down and bring her back up. Hold on a second.
Okay, well, maybe somebody could answer this, because you're talking, we're looking at the Vatican, we're looking at Catholic charities, we're looking at Highest, we're looking at the United Nations, which are stationed in Panama on ex-military bases. So what do we do about all the bad people coming in? I'm aware of the good people. I'm very aware of it. I'm an Air Force brat. I grew up, I lived in Panama. We did 2 tours of duty in Panama, and then I served in the military, and then I owned several franchises. So I'm aware of all the facets of this immigration thing. I lived in Laredo for 35 years. So it's frustrating because it's out of hand. It's getting very out of hand. Our national security is at stake, and that is what worries me the most. Thank you.
So I'm reading the Supreme Court ruling. It's interesting that Gorsuch was one of the dissenters.
Hold on, I lost Bree. Hold on 1 second. Sometimes they do that just to
that's
throw
okay.
in. Hold on,
Don't
I'm
worry,
trying to get
Stella.
Bree back.
Sorry, darling. Thank you.
I think she's back. She's here. There you go. Bree is here.
So weird.
So Bree, I know. So Lumi's questions were about the Catholic Church and the Catholic NGOs and what's going on with that.
Right. Yeah. I would have to say, Looney, like we could talk all day about what like Catholic charities, some of the organizations that are being supported, especially out of
I'm sure
Texas.
they all started with good intentions. Sure.
Yes. Yeah. No. Yes. 100%. Yes. And
Absolutely,
there are many
no
people
doubt.
who are very much involved with these organizations who are 100%.
Yes, ma'am.
Like
Absolutely.
good-hearted people who only want to serve in the most generous way, but they have been infiltrated.
Precisely.
And I brought up the whole situation with George Soros and Pico, and I mentioned Cardinal Maradiaga out of Honduras. And Cardinal Maradiaga is one of the Pope Francis's closest friends. He also was working hand in glove with George Soros to make an organization in Honduras, being involved with humanitarian stuff. And it's very complicated, but long and short, it is very.
Yes, permit me for just a second.
Sure.
One thing that just popped into my mind also is the Migration Pact for Open Borders. The United States signed it, right?
Right. Yeah. No.
And so did Mexico.
Yeah. So that it's connected. It's been a long time coming. They are utilizing Catholic organizations. If you go down right now and you take a look at some of these organizations, are hand in glove again with the cartel.
Right.
And they are claiming, it's for humanitarian situations. But like the problem is when you have these NGOs, it's very, very hard to deep dive into where they're going. And I will tell you firsthand that I have, I'm close to a founder of an NGO who has been involved with on the ground sustainability report, like support of humanitarian assistance at disaster relief scenarios. And he jumped in on this a few years ago because he felt like no one was getting on the ground and helping people in certain war-torn areas. And so he's been very involved in like Ukraine, and he has also found his way into the Palestinian situation. And he has bought, and he's Catholic, he has bought in 100% into the rhetoric and the lies that have been pushed out by by Hamas's organizations.
The infiltration of Hamas. absolutely is
so a lot of these
worrisome.
people are good-hearted, but they don't have the boundary. They just want to help people, and they don't have the boundaries to really take a look at whether or not they are being utilized for by bad actors. And so we see this with certain individuals who are in
Right.
leadership positions in the Catholic Church.
Then perhaps they shouldn't be allowed to do business. And that's like, who is overseeing these NGOs. That's why Philip came in here with a very good idea, I think, of who polices, who watches the watchers,
Yeah, so Lumi, USAID with the right person in leadership would have a full audit done of all the NGOs, and that's what I spoke about with Bonnie Glick when we discussed what USAID looked like during Trump's administration versus what it looks like now. And it's shocking. And
it's fully corrupt, USAID. Like, let's just be very clear that they have really this is gonna have, but it's the same with same with like even to the Pentagon situation. We are questioning now, like, okay, next administration goes in, let's say it's the Trump administration, what are they going to do to get rid? Well, we know if the other organization, Kamala Walls, gets in, then this is going to be disaster times 500 with the Pentagon scenario. But if Trump is elected, how is he going to actually address the amount of damage that has been done over the last 4 years and undo the Pentagon? It's going to have to be a massive audit with the Pentagon, and where the money is going there.
You start by closing the borders. That's and to get a hold of the situation that we have at hand. Whoever is president, and I'm not for Kamala, but whoever's president needs to close the borders. Now, Kamala has not said that she will do that, and that's where we need to press her on that.
Well, Lumi, I want to say something.
Yes,
ma'am. Just wanted to remind everybody very quickly that the way that the Democrats work is to overwhelm us, overwhelm any way, any shape, any kind of form. And if they are overwhelming us with the influx of illegal immigration, if they're overwhelming us, people are having to be distracted. They're being targeted on the streets. There's a lot of, money being allocated and resources being given to them. So we're fighting like 100 different type of wars at the same time, while we're, being kept busy fighting and solving all this, manufactured issues and problems, that are keeping us from focusing on what matters, which is making sure that we have, deputy registrars, registering voters, counting votes, and making sure that we having every single geographical location covered. I mean, we have to be focusing 100% on the election because that's how we're going to solve the problems. But yet, these Democrats are overwhelming our communities with a ton of different problems, moving the resources as fast as they can while they're still in power, because they know that November comes around, we're going to overwhelm them and get them out of office. So they're trying to, whenever you, how do you say that?
I've pretty much done, the poll watching for the Democrats, because when I first came to Laredo, got out of the Navy, I was a Democrat. And, I stuck with them for a while, and then I started seeing what was going on. And, and as a business person, you look towards business and trying to make some money. And, the Democrats got more and more difficult. And so you have to make choices. So I was part of opening up the Bush campaign when Bush ran. And that went beautifully, but then after that, Hillary came in, we supported Hillary. And because I've never stuck to one party, I go with the candidate that I like.
Well, so, now we have to stick to the goal, which is
absolutely,
pro-God,
no doubt about
pro-family, pro-America, close the border. I mean, it's very simple. It's boiled down to supporting our allies. And I mean, this isn't rocket science anymore. So this is how you have to bring the conversation to your friends.
I'm just saying, I've been on both sides of the coin.
And what I was trying to get at to the point with the Democrats right now is that, whenever they're taking their last strike, like when somebody's dying off and they have to take the last bite or something like that. I don't know if you know what I mean, Haya, like when...
Yes, I do.
How do you say that? Can you translate for me what I'm trying to say? Because
what they're often doing at times,
is taking their last punch. punch. Yeah.
So sometimes even like a snake, even though it's dying, will bite a person's leg, right?
Yes.
And just to use. Okay, so let's go to some of the hands. Daffy, do you have something quick, or I'm going to go to some of the guys that've been waiting?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lemmy.
I only wanted to touch on just something that I wanted to ask Larry, but he left. When he was talking about, I can't remember who was asking, where'd the money come from? Where is all the money come from? Because they have to pay the cartels. So I'm just wondering, did this problem blow up when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State? Because Bill Clinton, this is gossip. I have no evidence or receipts for his, what he did as governor of Arkansas, but I am told that he flew in cocaine from Mexico. So for the CIA, and that's her.
I'm sorry,
That's
who?
Hillary Clinton's
Who?
It was under the Clinton administration.
The Clinton.
Who
I
was
think
flying
North
cocaine?
and Bell
Clinton.
and Andrea would do a really good research on how what you just said, Daphne, is very important because we need to keep up with how and when things started.
We need
Just
some
like the
sources.
situation with
Okay, so
Israel.
hold on. What Daffy is talking about, somebody else has brought up to me several times and confirmed. And you have to look back at what Hillary Clinton's father was doing, but that is something that Daffy, I know exactly what you're talking about. In terms of evidence on that, I need to go see my DMs to see what came out or what was discussed. But at the end of the day, there's the Obama Politico article that talks about why Obama turned away from looking at South America and Hezbollah and the drug trafficking and the money and all that. And that may also give us some leads. But we can talk about that offline, Daffy, until we can confirm things, more accurately. Okay, let's go to, I think it's Bailey, then Lucky. I think, Bailey, Zapata, Lucky, and then Jeff. Go ahead, Bailey.
Real quick, I just wanted to say, Stealth is an excellent host. She puts out excellent spaces. And how I know that she's touching on a subject that the Dems do not want her to touch on is when I get 20 posts in saying that, look, this room is full of bots. Don't go in that room. You're going to get kicked out. You're going to get canceled. I've got 20 of those since I jumped in this room, and Stealth invited me, and that's great. I love it that she invites me because I love her spaces. And like I said, I know she is on a hot topic, and she's telling the truth. When you get 20 people saying, look, don't go in that room, you're going to get suspended. It's all bots. And they've even got my name on the list of bots, so I find that very amusing.
How do I know if I'm on a list of bots or my
your name was at the top of the list, sweetheart.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay, send me what you're looking at. Send me what you're looking at.
You're a bot, Stealth. That's hilarious. Anyway, yeah.
Hilarious.
I wanted to say that she's an excellent host, has excellent topics and excellent spaces. So when she sends you that invite or you see her name come up, Stealth is hosting, jump in there because what they're talking about in there is important. And 90% of it's factual. There are some rumors floating around about certain things. And that's because people didn't fact check, like Clinton and the cocaine. That wasn't Clinton, first of all. When George Bush was head of the CIA, he was part of the Iran-Contra deal. Ollie North flew weapons into South America, flew cocaine back. That was Bush when he was part of the CIA, and Ollie North, that's where that all started. It wasn't Clinton. Actually, Clinton, for a Democrat, did a damn good job as president. He balanced the budget, and we were in debt, period, by the time he left office, which was really cool for a Democrat. The rest of the stuff after him, that's a whole nother story. But I just want to say thank you, Stealth, for hosting a great room where I know I'm getting good information. And the Dems are worried enough to send me 20 different posts saying that this room is full of bots. That is absolutely hilarious.
I'm going to just
I'll send you a picture.
Thank you. Please send me a screenshot. Please do. I'm going to say just one thing. My spaces are good because of the speakers that come up. Some are a little wackadoodle. That's fine. I give a little bit of grace every once in a while. And sometimes they have great content and then they just fall right off of a cliff. But 99% of the speakers are just bring valuable valuable information, and that's really, it's a synergistic effect. It's not just about me. So I appreciate everybody. Hey, Patrick. Okay, let's go to, I think, was it Zapata, then Lucky Do? Go ahead, Zapata.
Thank you, and hello to everyone. I look at what you're talking about and it said South America and human trafficking. I want to talk very specifically about Nicaragua regime involvement in the trafficking of people to the United States. This has been documented. Actually, the State Department of the United States had sanctioned, very weakly sanctioned, uh, the way they do it, okay, Nicaragua allow charter flights coming all the way from Northern Europe, from Asia, from the Middle East. This has been documented. It has been talking on the news. And my point is the United States government technically have done nothing about it. They only sanction. I can post up a clip, the statements of the State Department sanctioning the let's say the charter flight company official, the vice president, for example, some visa restrictions to be specific. That's what they call it. What is that? They can do way more than that. The Nicaraguan regime, Managua airport should be sanctioned. The airport should be taking away the safety security of the airport because it's having problem with the security of the United States. But they barely do a thing. And there is a lot documented. You can look about Nicaraguan illegal flights. If you, I didn't want
Zapata,
to.
can you send me the link so I can send it to Larry so we can cover this again on this subject? Send me
Yeah, I
whatever
can.
links you have. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will send it direct to you, and I will collect more. And I have only one prepared. But this is, as I said, even the State Department have talked about it, and the only thing they come out with is with a visa restrictions for the vice president of the ex charter flight company. And this is big. Another one is going on flights from Venezuela to Nicaragua. Me as a Nicaraguan, we've been taking all that news from my sources, and all these flights from Venezuela, and we don't know why there's so many flights coming in. There is also people coming in, and then they go by land to the south border of the United States. I just want to bring that up. This is something that it should be talk more about it, and it's very
And those are the
concerning
ones.
that the United States
Those are
don't
the
do
ones that are
much.
coming in through the dinghies over there in La Jolla, San Diego. You know, they're all going around from Tijuana. Se están viniendo. They're going all the way north into California. You know, via boats, just like in Great Britain.
Sorry, I just want to close with this. So
Sure.
my point is, you have a big problem in the south border. There's no question about that. That's a mess. But on top of that, you have regimes like the Nicaraguan doing charter flights all the way from Northern Europe, Northern Africa, Middle East, and in Asia, bringing people, all kind of people, by the way, who represent a way dangerous for the security of the United States. So keep that in mind, and I will send you some of the information I have. And thank you for the opportunity. I will keep listening to you guys.
Zapata, I'm going to add you to my South American group chat, okay? I think it's me and like only men, but we only post the South American stuff in there that relates to protecting America, terrorism, and what's happening with elections and, that kind of stuff. So it's great. Okay. Lucky deal.
All right, thank you very much. First, I want to say, Stealth, thank you for the Second Amendment speech. You got a hearty amen from me. Now, what I wanted to ask about was Argentina.
You're rubber banding, Lucky. I can't hear Lucky.
I'm wondering if the millennials as you can, if that can anybody understand me?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So now we can. So you're
Should I talk?
asking about Millet? What did you say? No. What did you say?
Do you think Argentina will have a significant improvement in the region? In other words, if Milei can pull off what he says he can, if that might maybe have a domino effect of sensible governments in that region, or has he got too many problems to handle right now?
From what I've seen, it is going to be a strategic effect, and there are neighboring countries that are looking to him and to Bukele in El Salvador to make changes. Patrick, do you want to comment on this?
Yes. So here's the thing going on with Argentina is it is what he's doing is working, but it's a lot harder. It's been I think the population wasn't really ready for how difficult it would be, and this is something I think we really have to think about because we talk
But he did
about
warn them. Remember, Patrick, he said, look, it's going to be very hard for a period of time, but then we're going to come out of it on the other side, but we will have to feel pain. Go ahead. Sorry, Patrick.
no, and that's the thing is I was listening to Douglas Murray and Jordan Peterson, their latest interview, and one of the things, and this is something that comes up in my space a lot, and we really need to think about is bring it home. Like at my church, I guarantee there are a couple of, I just use the euphemism, Jorge Ramoses in the Awana, young kids section of our, children's church that are probably here illegally. And if you have to send them home, how are you going to respond to that when that happens? Because we need to be ready to stand up because very possibly, and there's been some backlash a little bit in Argentina, but he's maintained enough support to keep going. But that first crying mother and kid at the border, the first accident where somebody dies on the trip back home, or in the case of the economy, our friends, like I live in a state where 40% of six-figure jobs are federal jobs. So when those people start to get laid off, and that's the thing, guys, like this stuff's not going to be easy. But seeing that success, and this is something I think we really have to think about, is do you just rip the Band-Aid off, which is what Milei did, and do that quickly and deal with the pain? Or are we going to succumb to the temptation that we can do this slowly? But yeah, generally, like to your point, it's been very successful. I mean, the inflation is down to, it's still like 20% a month, but from 100% per month to 20%, pretty impressive. So
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Jeff, and then I think Patrick, you probably had something else to bring up other than Millet. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good evening, Stealth. How are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Andrea and everybody. Carolina. So then the cartel at this present moment is the number one enemy of the United States. Therefore, the cartel needs to be eliminated. And so in the process of eliminating the cartel, which is going to be a painful thing, the border security will be had at that time. It'll cost 3 divisions to secure this side and 1 to 2 down Panama coming up to secure the Darien Gap. When we make a strong move like that, it sets a precedence around the world that the United States will
Protect
not
its
tolerate or secure the borders. And with that being said,
and the
Stealth,
United
I
States
heard
will
something
not.
the other night.
Sorry, I was going to say, Jeff, and the United States will stop tolerating the murder of our young children from fentanyl and drugs. That's the other thing.
Correct. I heard something very disturbing that I just didn't want to say it yesterday. I tried to politic and debate people, and that puts me on places that are against people. And I wanted to tell you yesterday that we will take credit 100% for Hania's death in Iran because of what he did to us in Beirut in 1983. It just took 40 years to get him. And I was listening to them say, oh, they got our martyr, they got this guy. And I felt like telling them, hey, you guys are in the parliament, saying no parliament in the world except for in Iran will they ask to exterminate Israel or the United States. And then my question was after that, who is next after that? Who are you going to get after that? You're going to get them and you're going to get us. And then who else? But the man, he came on and he said, and I wanted you're the first person I'm repeating this to. He said, it does not matter if Hamas is in Israel. It does not matter if Hamas is in Lebanon. It does not matter if Hamas is in Jordan. It does not matter if Hamas in Saudi, Pakistan. Anywhere Hamas is, their only goal is to kill Jews. That's what he said. And I was like, whoa. And I thought to myself, anybody around the world that will tolerate that type of behavior is a very mentally ill person. And bringing to light President Joe Biden, who was mentally ill with dementia, that I personally noticed the last 4 years. President Trump did an excellent job on the Elon speech. He's very slyly there at the end. I think that he was a little bit tired. I noticed a few small quirks, but it was not that big of a deal. Majority of people would not notice that unless they've cared for the disabled or the elderly for many, many years. And with that being said, if we smash the cartel hard, quick, and fast and shut them down and destroy the fentanyl and destroy the human trafficking and the pedophilia and the sexual trafficking that Hollywood, Disney, and the Democrats have been covering up. You have to look no further than Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton and those guys and P. Diddy. And it's just a terrible place that if you vote Democrat, you're mentally either not fit or you're ignorant to the facts or you're voting with your emotions, not your logic. And we need logic now.
Yeah,
We don't
common
need
sense.
emotional.
Common sense. That's what Donald Trump just said in his speech. He said some unusual things in his speech with Sheldon Adelson's widow. There's a couple of points that I was like, "Ooh, I wish he didn't say it like that." However, the number one thing he said was, he said there will be no Israel in 5 years if you vote in Kamala Harris. And I try telling that to people every day, and worse than that will happen. To American embassies and such. We've lost now, I think, 10 embassies. It was 9. I think they lost their 10th embassy under this U.S. administration. In one administration, you lose 9 to 10 embassies. They have to be closed down because of the unsafety in those countries, one of which is like one of our allies. So this is like allies, one of the NATO allies, like Turkey, right? When they attacked the U.S. embassy again, like 8 months ago. So anyways, and Jordan and all these countries. Yeah, it's insane. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, Patrick, take us home.
All right. So thank you for. So I think one of the things that Jeff got into there, which is really interesting, is, and I live right by El Paso. So again, if we use history as our guide, which I think it's more than predictive usually, when Trump was in office the first time around, and the border was relatively secure, and the trafficking routes for humans and drugs were relatively locked down. What happened in Juarez, right across about 40 miles from me, was essentially a civil war on our border. And when right now the cartels are behaving themselves as best cartels can, because times are good. So I think Jeff brought up a very prescient point, because again, and I keep going back to this, guys, we have to be ready to stand our ground on the things that are important. Because the Democrats have made such a mess of the world, of our own country, of this border. But if that kind of event breaks out, if we really want to stop what's been going on, do we have to start to prepare ourselves that we may have to invade Mexico to secure our border? And I think in this conversation, because Israel did what we would have done if rockets were being fired across the border from Mexico into the US. And I think that should inform what we may have to do if a full-on civil war breaks out in Mexico. Because once the dollars are not flowing, those cartels are going to go to war, and the Mexican state cannot stop them. So as we wrap up here, I'm so glad you held the space, and I can't wait to go through all the stuff in the comments. Great info down there. But everybody, we need to start to prepare ourselves, and I wish Trump would, and he probably will as we get close to the election, but prepare us, because if everybody thinks this is going to be easy, then they could, in our system, we got 2 years, that means instead of 4 years, he might only have 2 years to really get things done. So I think perhaps he will find the words, like he does so often, to tell us that, hey, this is the right thing to do, expect things to be difficult, and we'll get through this together. So that is
Also,
what I would say.
Patrick, if you have time to listen to the early part of the space where Larry Taunton was in here, he goes through his experience going down to the tri-border region, and he was our guest speaker, obviously. And we had great, you can just listen to it, while you're going for a walk or folding laundry. But I posted a lot of the articles on my feed about Kamala Harris from the New York Post. The article that was just written, it is linked with every single link for every claim that they were lying about. It's in that article from the New York Post that just came out on August 9th. So I suggest you look at my feed on that. Okay, guys, I'm closing the space because I want to keep the recording for Larry and for media and everything. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I know there's a ton of news regarding Israel, the ceasefire, what's going on with all the spooks that just met in Doha, from RCA to every other organization, what's going on. There's a rumor mill and there's propaganda also. The Turkish government decided to beat the shit out of each other inside a parliament, and it couldn't have happened to a better group of people. The last time this Turkish foreign minister, he cursed the Jews and everything, man had a heart attack and died in front of everybody on live TV, and now they're beating the shit out of each other. Excuse my French for the recording, and it's wild. And this is our NATO ally. These are the serious people we're supposed to be going into, our brothers in arms. These are what we consider NATO allies. God help us. The most subversive country at this point, run by Muslim Brotherhood. Anyways, attacking our embassy, our U.S. embassy, and saying death to America on the day of independence of Turkey, from Muslim Brotherhood. Anyways, so taking over the Holy Church over there and making it back into a mosque, just in the last 2 years. It's ridiculous. So anyways, Andrea, and please follow all my co-hosts and the prior speakers. I appreciate everybody. Follow Patrick and Carolina and everybody, and happy birthday to Carolina. And Andrea, say something, and I will close.
I'll say something great. I read the order of the Supreme Court, and all partial stays requested by the Department of Education are denied, meaning the entire regulation and provisions are gone for now. They sent it down to the lower court, and they trust that the lower court will render the right decision. And I personally also do trust that. They obviously read the brief. They listened to oral arguments, if there were any. I don't know. I can't tell you that. And they pretty much agreed at this point that a lot of the provisions within it did not go through the appropriations, the Congress, and it's outside of the federal agency's purview to just mandate these provisions. So this is a great day in America.
For Title IX, that's absolutely correct. Philip, I'm closing down. Is it a quickie?
Yeah, it's a pretty quick one. I wanted everyone, if they could do me a favor and follow one of the posts I put to Elon Musk. Krasenstein has stacked up the deck with community notes. That's why many of us can't get that status, because stack them with his people, far lefties. So I asked Elon Musk to do something about it, and I highlighted the Kamala border czar stuff that he lies about all the time. So if you guys can help out with that, maybe we can get some real justice on here once and for all. Thanks. I'll land my plane.
Okay, Philip, I'm going to send it into the big group chats as well and make sure it gets spread for you. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Great job on that. Yeah, community notes, that whole thing is wild. Okay, guys, thank you. Good night.